Sorry, boy, but his captain's got to teach his men what happens to those what crossing.
Captain's got to teach stuff.
Good morning from the Bat Cave. It is Monday, June 9th, 2025, and I'm trying to get back on track with my Bible teaching on Mondays. I'm in my new house, and so I'm going to try to kind of get cracking on the Serpent by the Way research, which hopefully will be a little bit more extensive from here. I'm starting to read. I'm actually reading Gary Wayne's Genesis 6 conspiracy. I just came across him. Some people have mentioned him on the channel before, and I came across him on a YouTube channel kind of randomly this weekend and started listening to a bunch of his stuff because people had mentioned to me before. And I'm about 80 pages into this book, and I just got to tell you guys, it is garbage. Of course, he's got 1,950 awesome reviews, because if you make hokey garbage, you're going to get awesome reviews. And I'm going to do more extensive breakdowns on what is wrong with this stuff. But I mean, it's a huge 800-page book, and almost everything in it is lifted from Josephus, stuff that's not necessarily biblically valid, Freemason stuff, Gnostic stuff, Nag Hammadi library stuff, and he is very uncritical of it. He just treats it like it's history. Here's a review. Somebody says this is pro-Islam. I don't know if that's certain, but he definitely there's something seriously off about Gary Wayne, and I'm going to try to contact him directly before I butcher this book, but it is awful. I mean, it is awful. He basically makes monotheistic religions good, polytheistic religions bad. He is constantly lifting from Gnostic sources and Freemason sources, and then he is constantly misrepresenting what the Bible says and means. I mean, constantly, to promote this theory that there are these basically Illuminati bloodlines descended from the Nephilim, which is what the Freemasons teach. This is what the Illuminati and the Freemasons teach, and that they're going to produce the Antichrist one day. There's nothing of that in Scripture. Okay, we've had many Antichrists in the world. We're going to have an Antichrist. Is he going to be associated with Freemasons? Possibly. Could he think he's got bloodlines going back to the Nephilim? Possibly, but we don't have any evidence to support this scripturally or historically or archaeologically. And the stuff that I have come across, I mean, I'm 80 pages in, and I'm literally up to over 100 errors that I could prove false off the top of my head. It's just really bad. So anyways, I'm going to be reading that, and it's probably going to be a lot of fodder for what I'm going to study and straighten out in my Serpent by the Way book, because it is essentially an antithesis to what I'm writing in my Serpent by the Way, which is where the mysteries went and came from, and how they influenced our history today. And his is just bad research. I mean, really bad biblical theology and hermeneutics, coupled with a lot of just swallowing Freemason writings. I mean, his primary source material for everything he's saying is like 3 different Freemason histories, and he just treats it as fact, and it's really garbage. So anyways, I'm going to get into that more deeply. That's not what I came on here to talk about. I'm going to continue on with Chronicles. I was reading it yesterday. I mean, we'll probably get through First Chronicles in a setting or two. It's a lot of history on David that we covered in First Kings, and a lot of it is truncated, so we should be able to get through that rather quickly. But before we do that, I want to correct myself on something. If any of you guys were listening to my early Genesis stuff, we talked about Ham and the giants that were killed in Ham in Genesis 14. So in Genesis 14, basically Amraphel, who I believe to be Sargon's grandson, Naram Sin, Amraphel is going to go through Canaan, and he's going to kill a bunch of tribes of giants. Now, this is stuff that I covered, and when I covered it, I noted the Zuzims in Ham, and I said, there's a couple of different theories. Ham could be Egypt, because Egypt is called the land of Ham. Africa is really just the land of Ham. Or it could be Hamath, I thought, because you have the Hamathites. Well, it turns out that there is a descendants of Ham that dwell in Canaan, which is around the area of Gath. It's not that far away from Gath, which is where giants were. So that actually makes sense. Zuzims means, I believe it means terrible ones. There's like, they're all different names, but these names, like I said, revolve around ghosts. So, wandering ones. So Zuzim means wandering ones. And this is where probably some of the early Nephilim went. Ashtaroth seems to be a core of where they first came down. So notice he says he smote the Rephaims in Ashtaroth Karnaim. That's the name of the city. The Zuzims in Ham, and the Emims in Shavath Kirithaim. So we're going to look at all these locations just so you understand. So first we're going to go to Shavath Kirithaim. You see the Dead Sea. The name of the place is something Baal. Beth Baal Meon, Beth Baal Peor. You see, notice the term Baal. Remember, Baal means husbands. And so that makes sense that you have Kirithaim is right in the middle of all these Baal places. And there's another place called Adaroth apparently around there. But this is northeast of the Dead Sea. So you see Jericho right here. So it's roughly right across from Jericho, which makes sense because you have Og, king of Bashan, kind of up north of here. If you see this larger map here, you see the Sea of Galilee up here. You're going to have Mount Hermon. You're going to have Ashtaroth. Down here, you're going to have these would have been the Amorites who ruled this area, which were allies with the Rephaim, which are the Nephilim essentially. And then we have this other location called Ashtaroth Karnaim. So I believe that's going to be the same Ashtaroth that is at the base of Mount Hermon. Apparently that's closer up here by the Sea of Galilee. This is the Golan Heights region. And if you go to Mount Hermon, you see this map of ancient Israel. Here's Mount Hermon right here. There's Bashan where Og is, and Og ruled from the city of Ashtaroth, which is right up here. So you see Damascus over here. Dan would have been right here, and Tyre would have been right here, and Mount Hermon is basically just north of that. And then south of that is going to be Ashtaroth. You're going to have Manassites that are going to rule over here, and then they get pushed out by Og and Bashan and these Amorites after they're getting kicked out of Babylon. And then they're going to make a comeback after Moses comes and kills Og, king of Bashan, and the Manassites are going to be back here. This is the half-tribe of Manassites, and then down here you see Jabesh Gilead. Those are the Gileadites who are also Manassites, okay? So we have that established. Well, as I was reading through Chronicles, and I get to another usage of Ham, you see in Chronicles 4, it's talking about the Simeonites who kick out these descendants of Ham. So Chronicles 4:40 says, they found a fat pasture and good, and the land was wide and quiet and peaceable, for they of Ham had dwelt there of old. So in other words, the Hamites had dwelt there in ancient times. Well, Ham, like most of these ancient people, remember, he's going to be around 100 by the time they get off the flood, so he's going to live 500 years beyond that. So the main sons that he has is Canaan, Put, Cush, and Mizraim, okay? Well, those are probably the sons from his first wife, and then their sons are going to be in the table of nations. They're going to get the nations divided by them, and he's probably going to have a later wife like Abraham and a lot of these guys do after their wives die, and then have a bunch of other children. And those other children seem to be the Hamites that actually do dwell in Canaan. So if we look for the place, it says they went to the entrance of Gedor, even to the east side of the valley, to seek pasture for their flocks, and they found a fat pasture. So the entrance of Gedor is where we want to look, and that's where these Hamites dwelled. Well, if you see the Gedor is right here. And you see Hebron right up here. And you remember, the descendants of Arba were dwelling up here. And then you see Gath just downhill from here. So the descendants of Arba are going to be Anakim. So Anak was probably the original OG forefather of these Rephaim. So the Rephaim, Nephilim and Rephaim are generic terms. They mean fallen ones and departed ones. So remember, the Baalim are posing as departed husbands of these women that that are widowed, essentially. That's how they originally start mating with women. And so that's why they're called husbands, because they're believed to be the deified ghosts of these departed husbands. And of course, they're fallen angels. They mate with these women. They create Nephilim. And then you're going to have Anak probably being the main OG forefather of the like the first Nephilim of Ashtra. So Ashtra would have been his mother. Some demon is going to be his father. It's essentially the bull of heaven. It's the OG Baal, who they're going to merge with Yahweh appearing in the storm to become the storm god, Baal Hadad, who eventually becomes Zeus. Okay, so you see these regions. This is you have giants here. You have this entrance of Gedor here, and then you have Gath here. These are all areas where giants were, and that makes sense because the Hamites are right here. Apparently, they had Nephilim among them. The Canaanites did, so these would have been later sons of Ham. The Amorites did, and then the sons of Anak are going to go with the Amorites over to Babylon, which is why they're known among the Mesopotamians as Anunnaki. Okay, they're the sons of Anak. Okay, so if we look at Gedor, okay, so we see Gedor map. It is basically saying that the sons of Simeon cleared these guys out here. And then took over their pasture lands, essentially. But you have another location for a Gedor. And so I'm not sure which one is which, because this would be based on, I think, modern Jewish belief. There's Gerar. So we're going to hold this. This is where this Bible map says Gedor is. And if you see Bethlehem up here, it's between Bethlehem and Hebron, kind of off to the left here. And it makes sense that these giants seem to be dwelling in the mountains in the most cases. And then when they get driven out of the mountains, the last of them are going to go to Gath. Those are going to be Goliath and his brothers. They seem to be the descendants of the remnants of these people. So being that Gath is inland, we have no reason to believe that these giants sailed off and that there's continued bloodlines of these giants. Is it possible? Sure, it's possible. But what you're having is, remember, the original Nephilim were descended from angels. But once these angels are imprisoned, which is before the time of Job, so this is before the Jews go into Egypt, there is no more room for original Nephilim to be created because the angels that did it went to prison. And I'm pretty sure God is not going to let new angels keep doing this. It's something that the angels apparently did before the flood up until about the time of Egypt. So you're looking at roughly 1,000 years or 800 years that this is going on. God puts a stop to it, and he imprisons these angels in Tartarus, or the sides of the bottomless pit, which is, if you remember, the pit that's mentioned in Jesus in Luke 13, where he's talking about Lazarus and the rich man. The chasm between them is think of like a prison, and one side is kind of minimal security, and the other side is more gen pop, and then maximum security is going to be Tartarus, which is going to be a pit down in the middle, and these are all isolated from each other and the rest of the population. That's essentially what it is, okay? So Gath is going to be where they end up, and then we note them getting killed. We're going to cover that actually when we get into David's mighty men killing these guys, okay? So we left off, I believe, in Chronicles 10. And there's another, just because I'm reading this is not on the forefront of my mind, I'm not trying to pick on Gary Wayne, but I'm going to try to contact him in the hopes that maybe he's just deceived. But he seems to be a Freemason. He seems to be an apologist for the Freemasons. That's what it seems to be based on the things he's saying. Either that or he just has very little discernment, but he is very, very off on biblical things. And I would not recommend people listening to him at all. At all. I would say flee from him as a deceiver. He's deceiving and being deceived. Is he willing to repent? We'll see. But most people, to get to the point where they're publishing, he's going around every site pushing this stuff. It is very much false doctrine, and it'll be a long shot that he's willing to repent. But I'll try to reach out to him. We'll see. Okay. Now, we get to Chronicles 10. If you remember, we go through all the genealogies. And then again, it's going to get into the genealogy of Saul in chapter 9. Well, the reason it's going to get into the genealogy of Saul a second time, and it's just going to repeat what it said, I think, in chapter 6, is because this is probably like up to this verse, chapter 9, verse 34, is probably the summary of the genealogical records, which is going to be kind of your intro to the narrative, okay? And then the narrative begins here, and it's going to begin with Saul's genealogy again, because what you have up to 34, notice it says whose chief fathers were the Levites, chief throughout the generation, these dwelt at Jerusalem. What you have before is basically the record of the people who are coming back. These would be the record of the ancestors of the people who are now coming back to Jerusalem to dwell in the days probably of Ezra. Okay, this is going to end where the book of Ezra begins, so it's a high likelihood that it's it's in the time of Ezra that this is composed. And then now we're going to get into the chronology of David's house, and since David starts with basically taking the kingship from Saul after he dies, we have to start with an intro on Saul again. So he says, in Gibeon there dwelt the father of Gibeon, Jehiel, whose wife's name was Maacah, firstborn son Abdon, then Zur and Kish, and Baal, and Ner, and Nadab, and Gedor, and Ahio, and Zechariah, and Mikloth. And Mikloth begat Shimeam, and they also dwelt with their brethren at Jerusalem, over against their brethren. So they dwelt in Jerusalem. In other words, these descendants, remember, Jerusalem gets taken by David from the Jebusites, and then these descendants of Kish are going to, the ones that remain after Saul dies, are going to dwell in Jerusalem. Is he keeping there because he's treating them well? Well, he does make a promise to Jonathan to treat his sons well. And they seem to be the only ones that survive this. So yes, I would say that's the reason why. And then it says, and Ner begat Kish, Kish begat Saul, Saul begat Jonathan, and Malchishua, and Abinadab, and Ishbal. These ones are going to die with Saul. This one is going to try to be propped up by Abner as a rival to David, and he's going to go down. The sons of Jonathan were Meribal begat Maacah begat, the sons of Maacah were Pithon, Melech, and Teriah, and Ahaz. It's interesting, one of his sons are named king. This is this son of, a grandson of Jonathan. But anyways, Ahaz begat Jar, and Jar begat Alameth, and Azmaveth, and Zimri begat Moza, and Moza begat Binia, and Rephaiah, and his son, Elisiah, and his son, and Azel, his son, and Azel had 6 sons. And the names of these are Azrikam, Bokeru, Ishmael, Sariah, Obadiah, and Hanan. These were the sons of Azael, okay? So you see these are like 1, 2, 3, 4, roughly 5, 6 generations from Jonathan. And the idea is any Benjamites coming back who are of the nobility, in other words, they are descended from Jonathan, are going to be able to trace back their family records to these people. That's the idea. And I suspect, again, that Saul of Tarsus is probably one of them, one of those descendants. So anyway, it says, now the Philistines fought against Israel, and the men of Israel fled before the Philistines. They fell down slain at Mount Gilboa, and the Philistines followed hard after Saul and his sons. The Philistines slew Jonathan and Abinadab and Malchishua, the sons of Saul. And the battle went sore against Saul, and the archers hit him, and he was wounded of the archers. Then said Saul to his armor-bearer, draw thy sword and thrust me through therewith, lest these circumcised come and abuse me. But his armor-bearer would not, for he was sore afraid, and Saul took a sword and fell upon it. I'm not feeling King Jamesy today, so I'm going to read NRSV, and hopefully it's not going to jack it up too much. The next day, Philistines came to strip the dead. They found Saul and his sons fallen on Mount Gilboa. Oh, I'm sorry. When all the men of Israel who were in the valley saw that the army had fled, and that Saul and his sons were dead, they abandoned their towns and fled, and the Philistines came and occupied them. Next day the Philistines came to strip the dead, and they found Saul and his sons fallen at Mount Gilboa. They stripped him and took his head and his armor, and sent the messengers throughout the lands of the Philistines, carried good news to their idols and the people. They put his armor on the temple of their gods, and fastened the head in the temple of Dagon. That's gross. And when Jabesh Gilead heard everything that the Philistines had done to Saul, all the valiant warriors got up and took away the body of Saul and the bodies of his sons, and brought them to Jabesh. And they buried their bones under the oak in Jabesh, and fasted 7 days. So Saul died for his unfaithfulness. He was unfaithful to the Lord and did not keep the command of the Lord. Moreover, he had consulted a medium seeking guidance. Okay, so this is not going to get into all the stuff Saul did wrong. He's going to just basically say Saul was unfaithful. We see that from Kings. And he consulted a medium. That's why he's dead. Okay, and did not seek guidance from the Lord. Therefore, the Lord put him to death and turned the kingdom over to David, the son of Jesse. So it's really just meant to introduce David. And you're going to look at 1st and 2nd Chronicles, and you're going to want to remember that a full probably half of 1st and 2nd Chronicles is just about David and Solomon, okay? The stuff leading up to David, which is the chronologies and the line of Saul, occupies about 10 chapters. The stuff after Solomon until the fall of Jerusalem and then they're being allowed to go back by Cyrus occupies about 16 chapters in Second Chronicles. But most of First Chronicles is about David, and I would say the first almost 40% of Second Chronicles is about Solomon. And the reason is because they're restoring Jerusalem, they're restoring the kingdom, or they're restoring the realm of Judea. It's a province now, essentially, of the Persian Empire, and in the hopes of Messiah coming and restoring the kingdom to Judea. Okay, so that's the promises of their prophets, and that's what they want to see happen. And so they're going to meticulously note how the kingdom was under David and Solomon before it gets split during Rehoboam, because this is kind of their heyday. This is what they're expecting as their restoration of the kingdom, and so that's what this is largely about. Okay, so we're going to get into a lot of details about how David organized things, how Solomon organized things, what the temple was like, what David's armies and his singers and the Levites and all this stuff was like, because this is what they're expecting Messiah to come to restore. Okay, this is largely how the Old Testament closes. For some time now, even while Saul was king, it was you who commanded the army of Israel. The Lord your God said to you, "It is you who will shepherd my people Israel. You shall be ruler over my people Israel." So this is known. Remember, David has had loyal guys who departed from Saul to him. We're going to kind of list all this stuff, but now everybody's saying it, okay? So they're going to skip over the whole rebellion with Ishbaal trying to have a civil war with him that's going to last a few years. They're just not going to mention that. So all the elders of Israel came to the king at Hebron, and David made a covenant with them at Hebron before the Lord, and they anointed David king over Israel, according to the word of the Lord by Samuel. So you have Samuel anoint him, then you have the people anoint him. So they are acknowledging, they're confirming that he was God's choice. This is why his authority is so strong in Israel, because the people, all their elders, and that's why they're going to note who came over to him and all his mighty men, because his mighty men aren't just like, oh, these are his famous warriors. These are warlords from various tribes who are loyal to him. And so if you're descended from those tribes and those warlords, you're going to say, hey, they swore an oath to David. This is a big deal, okay? So David and all of Israel marched to Jerusalem, that is Jebus, where the Jebusites were, and the inhabitants of the land. The inhabitants of Jebus said to David, "You will not come in here." Nevertheless, David took the stronghold to Zion, now the city of David. David had said, "Whoever attacks the Jebusites first shall be chief and commander." And Job, the son of Jeriah, went up first, and he became chief. So this is how Job became basically the head of David's armies. David resided in the stronghold, therefore they called it the city of David. So again, the city of David is now a part of Jerusalem, and it was roughly a quarter of Jerusalem or a third of Jerusalem by their day before Jerusalem was sacked. So that's why they say now called the city of David. Okay, the stronghold of Zion is the part that's called the city of David, and then Solomon's going to expand it. Hezekiah, Uzziah, these guys are going to. Jehoshaphat, I think, is going to expand it too, and it's going to keep getting bigger. And that's what it is. So he says he built the wall around from Millo in complete circuit, and Job repaired the rest of the city. So notice they are noting, remember, they are rebuilding the wall of the city under Nehemiah. And so they're noting who built what parts of the wall and what parts of the city were traditionally ascribed to David and Job, what parts are going to be described to Jehoshaphat and this other stuff, because that is the context of what's going on here, is the rebuilding of the city. And David became greater and greater, for the Lord of hosts was with him. Now these are the chiefs of David's warriors who gave him strong support in his kingdom, together with Israel, to make him king, according to the word of the Lord concerning Israel. So notice it says chiefs. Here it says mighty men. Now this is another thing I'm going to rip on Gary Wayne for, okay? And this is something I've heard probably from Chuck Missler and guys like this. I used to be a really big fan of Chuck Missler. I have since learned that Chuck Missler was a reporter of quite a bit of hearsay and bad scholarship, okay? This is why so many hokey conspiracy theories lead their authority back to him. This is why Chuck Missler gets into the ideas that the Nephilim are coming back, the ideas that the Zodiac was once legitimate, like in other words, they believed that there was once legitimate forms of astrology, which is not true. And this is why you have people in largely charismatic circles and eschatology circles that are appealing to astrology now in their predictions and stuff like that. That largely goes to Chuck Missler. But I want to show you something, because Gary Wayne is going to say that the term Gibborim has to do with Nephilim. It does not. Notice that David's mighty men, which the NRSV just translates chiefs, are called Gibbor, okay? Well, Gibbor, it says intensive from the same, powerful, implication, warrior, tyrant, champion, chief, excel, giant, man, mighty man, strong man, or valiant man, okay? Well, this is the word I'm going to use here, strong man, okay? So mighty man, mighty means strong, but a strong man is somebody who is essentially a warlord. They're somebody who are going to rule a band of militants. So David would have been considered a strong man while he was on the run from Saul, but he had essentially a squad of mercenaries that were with him, and I believe they were in the hundreds, and then there were thousands that were eventually loyal to him before he became king, okay? But he's going to have his crew of mercenaries, and you still have guys like this today. In fact, I worked with one of these guys who was an ex-Marine who basically led a network of 300 mercenaries, and they would work professionally together, and they would essentially be mercenaries for hire, okay? So you still have the CIA and different governments and stuff like that employing people like these to do stuff that their military by law cannot necessarily do, things that are kind of quiet and off the books. But back then, the reason you want to note this, the Gibbor is a warrior tyrant mercenary warlord. So think of Achilles in the movie Troy, where he's going to have his, I think they're called Myrmidon, which are the men who report to him, and they're considered the fiercest warriors of the Trojan War. Okay, well, Achilles is their head, he's a warlord, and the Myrmidon are his mercenaries, essentially, okay? And typically, they're going to be responsible for these guys' pay, the care of their families, and stuff like that. And it's like the 300 men trained in Abraham's household. So Abraham would have been considered kind of a warlord. Well, these mighty men are themselves warriors who lead other bands of warriors, okay? And so the fact that they're all allied to David is important. Now, here's the thing. Notice it comes from the word Geber, which literally means a valiant man or warrior, okay? Or a person simply even one man mighty, okay? Gabar, a primitive root, to be strong, by implication, to prevail, exceed, confirm, be mighty, be stronger, prevail, strength, stronger, valiant. Notice there's no association with the word Gibborim and Nephilim, okay? Now, if you go to Gibborim, this is important, the first Gibbor, okay? The first instance of it is you have Nephilim, and it says, there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bare children unto them, and they became mighty men, warlords. So in other words, the pre-flood Nephilim were champions and warlords like Goliath, okay? And so they had tribes of men who followed them, but they were warlords, okay? And so Gilgamesh would be considered, Gilgamesh and Kindu would be considered these warlord Nephilim, okay? Well, then you see in Genesis 10, it says, and Cush begot Nimrod, and he began to be a mighty one in the earth, okay? Well, what does it mean he began to be a mighty one in the earth? This is a bad translation. This word shalal means to bore, to wound, dissolve, figuratively, profane, to break one's word, denoun, begin, defile, break, eat, first, gather the grape thereof, take the inheritance, pipe player. Okay, what does this mean? Okay, well, began can mean first. He was the first mighty one, or the first strong man in the earth. Okay, so why did they say that about Nimrod? He was the first strong man in the earth. After the flood, he was the first warlord who tries to take over and form an empire. This is Sargon of Akkad, okay? Notice he's a son of Cush, so one of the many things Gary Wayne is going to get wrong is he's going to count Nimrod as in Merkur, who was a pre-flood guy, okay? And Merkar means chief priest of, I believe, like the logistics, and he's basically the guy who invents cuneiform. Well, the gods who are noted as basically inventing writing are Thoth of Egypt, Hermes of the Greeks, and then Mercury of the Romans. So it's all based on the planet Mercury, okay? Well, and Mercury, if you take the N off, which means chief priest, you have Mercur left. Mercury, okay? So, and Mercury is Mercury, and that's why he goes down in history as the god of the messenger of the gods, because he invents cuneiform. That's literally where that comes from, okay? This is not Enoch, like he's going to say. It's not whatever the Freemasons say. You got to remember, the Freemasons were largely cults of monastic guys and tradesmen, essentially, that came out of the Middle Ages. These guys weren't scholars. These were guys who had a lot of hearsay knowledge that they got from the Muslims and the Knights Templar, and it's largely BS. The Muslims are full of crap because they're getting most of their stuff from Gnosticism. And so Gary Wayne is basically just consolidating all that into a narrative of the future, which is essentially as bunk as anything you're going to find in Gnosticism and Islam when it comes to history. It's not scholarship. It doesn't match with archaeology. It doesn't match with the Bible. It doesn't match with most of our historical records. Why? Because it's so-called secret history because it's just not true. It's their made-up legends and stuff like that, okay? Anyways, the Nephilim were warlords, and Nimrod was a warlord. That doesn't mean Nimrod had anything to do with Nephilim, nor was he a Nephilim. He was a warlord, okay? So when you see Mighty One, okay, this is why the NRSV is going to translate it. It says, he was the first on earth to become a mighty warrior, okay? Therefore, he was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore, it is said, like Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. Okay. The word before, I believe, can be translated to be against. Let's see. Oh, in Panyim means in the presence of or in the face of. Okay, so it basically means he's defying God. Okay. Why? Because Noah sets up Shem, Melchizedek, as the chief priest of the world. He's the high judiciary, and Nimrod tries to take over as a rival and basically start the first empire. Okay? And so he is a mighty hunter. Notice a Gabor Said. A Said means catches food, hunter, hunting. Okay? So he's a strongman hunter, and of course he's known for having a bow, and he probably started out with actual animal hunting, and that's how he got so good at killing when everything was peaceful. And then he uses that skill set and probably has a band of hunters who go out and get meat for people, and that is going to turn into basically the first band of warlords. They literally start out probably as hunters with bows and spears and stuff like that, okay? So fast forward back to David's time, you want to understand that David's warlords are simply that. They're warlords. These are chiefs of tribes of warrior men. Okay? So he said, there are also chief of the mighty men who David had, who strengthened themselves with him in his kingdom and all Israel to make him king according to the word of the Lord concerning Israel. So in other words, as David grew powerful, these warlords, notice it says strengthen themselves with him. Okay, let's see what some other translations say. Gave him strong support in his kingdom. Shazak, to bind, restrain, conquer. This is the same word as restrainer in Daniel, okay? So what did they do? They didn't strengthen themselves with him. They bound themselves to him. That means they made oaths to him, and they became his regional lords, okay? So if this were translated more accurately, there would be these are the Rosh, the chief strongmen, or the chief warlords, who bound themselves to his kingdom, with him in his kingdom. Okay, so think like, if you remember. So what are these guys saying? He's saying these were the chief warlords who bound themselves with David in his kingdom. So if you remember the fasces symbol. of the Romans is 10 rods bound around an axe, okay? Essentially, this is the executive authority, the axe, and the rods are the local regional states or kingdoms or city-states or whatever that are bound with him to say we're swearing fealty to him, to this authority, okay? And so what you see here is this is David's version of this. These are the chief mighty men who bound themselves together with David to strengthen his kingdom, to make him king according to the word of the Lord. So in other words, we are acknowledging the word of the Lord. We are swearing fealty to you because you're the Lord's choice to rule over us. This is important because their descendants, if they have any problem with the house of David, the idea is your ancestors bound themselves with an oath to David, which means if you go against David, you're under God's curse. Okay, so this is not good. So anyways, he says, and this is the number of mighty men David had, Jashobeam, the Hakmonite. So it's going to name 33 mighty men that David has, okay? So these are David's warlords. So for those of you who are all into Freemasonry and then why their obsession with the number 33, David has 33 warlords underneath him, okay? So he says, this is the number of mighty men who David has in Jashobeam, the Hakmonite, the chief of the captains. He lifted up his spear against 300 men and slain them at one time. So this guy is personally responsible for killing 300 men at once. Does that mean his men? Probably his men, okay? These are probably the people, they probably killed people who were trying to kill David. That would be my guess. After him was Eleazar, the son of Dodo, the Ahohite, who was one of the three mighties. He was with David at Pasdamim, and there were Philistines who were gathered there together, where a parcel of ground full of barley, and the people fled from before the Philistines. And they set themselves in the midst of that parcel and delivered it and slew the Philistines, and the Lord saved them by a great deliverance. Okay, now remember, Joab becomes the chief of his armies by being the first to go up against Jerusalem, okay? These guys, because of their brave acts, so again, this guy could have personally killed 300 people. I'm a little sus that he killed 300 people by himself at once. It was probably him and his men, however many they were. Typically, it's going to be these guys, maybe their sons, and then their servants. And like Abraham has 300 mighty men, and so how many guys did he have with him? Who knows? I doubt that one guy killed 300 people by himself at once. This guy is going to make a stand while everybody else is retreating in an open field and fight by himself in an open field to secure everybody else's retreat, and that's why he's famous. And so it says they set themselves, notice it says, and they set themselves in the midst of that parcel and delivered it and slew Philistines, and the Lord saved him by a great deliverance. So notice it's not him by himself. Oh, no, I'm sorry. He was with David at Pasdamim, and there were Philistines that were gathered together where a parcel of ground full of barley, and the people fled from before the Philistines. So it's him and David fighting against the Philistines by themselves. Now, probably it's David and his men and this guy and his men, and that's why he becomes a chief warlord. So what's happening is as David's coming up and he's doing this warlord stuff, okay? These are people who are confederate with him, kind of like Abraham is confederate with the Amorites. And so what he's probably doing is making promises to these guys who are his OG supporters, saying, when I'm king, I'll put you over this region, this command, whatever. And he's giving them basically power over sections of the military and over regional territories once he's king, okay? Now it says, now 3 of the 30 captains went down to the rock of David in the cave of Adullam, and the host of the Philistines encamped at the valley of Rephaim. And David was then in the hold, and the Philistine garrison was then at Bethlehem. So this is after Saul is dead, and the Philistines are going after David, and he's in a cave. And these guys are with him, and they've got a garrison at Bethlehem, so he can't get there. Okay? She said, and David longed and said, oh, that one would give me drink of the water at the well of Bethlehem that is at the gate. And the 3 brake through. The host of the Philistines drew water out of the well at Bethlehem. It was at the great gate, and took it and brought it to David. But David would not drink it, but poured it out in the ground. So David just said this thing, probably saying, oh, if I could only drink well from the water at Bethlehem, because he is longing to deliver the city from the Philistines. And these guys were like, we'll get you a drink of water. And they get in there, they fight their way in there, or sneak in there, whatever they do, and get him water. They risk their lives to get him water from Bethlehem. Because of their brave act, he says, the Lord said, May God forbid me that I should do this thing. Shall I drink the blood of these men who have put their lives in jeopardy? For with the jeopardy of their lives they brought it. Therefore he would not drink it. And these things did the three mightiest. Okay, so this is the instance when these three men, showing their loyalty to David, they risked their lives to get him a drink of water from the hometown he was born in, because the Philistines have a garrison there. And because of that bravery, David is like, I'm going to put you three guys as the chief captains of my mighty men. So Job is the head of the army. Under him are these three. Okay. And Abishai, the brother of Job, he was chief of the three. For lifting up a spear against 300, he slew them that had a name among the three. So there was the first two, and this is the third. So you have Abishai, you have Eleazar, the son of Dodo, the Ahohite, and then you have Jashobeam, the Hakmonite. These three. Okay. No, I'm sorry. The first three are going to be, I believe, Job and these two. So you're going to have Job, Jashobeam, and Eleazar. Those seem to be the first three. The second three are going to be Abishai, the brother of Job. Of the three, he was more honorable than the two, for he was their captain, howbeit he attained not to the first three. So there's going to be a division of the army. Remember, Job's over the whole army, okay? And Abishai is over a division of army that is split between these other two guys who were with him when they did this brave act. So they're going to be like commanders of the army. So think of Job as like the commander-in-chief of the army. Obviously, he's under David. Abishai and those other two guys are over, it looks like kind of like thirds of the army. And then Abishai's going to have these other two guys under him. That's why he's more honorable than them. So Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada, the son of a valiant man of Kabzeel, who had done many acts, he slew 2 lion-like men of Moab. He also went down and slew a lion in the pit on a snowy day. And he slew an Egyptian, a man of great stature, 5 cubits high. So a cubit is 18 inches. So 5 times a foot and a half is a guy who's like 7 feet tall. And the Egyptian's hand was a spear like a weaver's beam. So that just means a spear that's so thick that your average small guy can't get his hand around it. Okay, Goliath had a spear like a weaver's beam as well. And he went down to him with a staff and plucked the spear out of the Egyptian's hand and slew him with his own spear. So he's a BA dude. These things did Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada, who had a name among the three mighties. And you remember we talked about this guy in Samuel. He's pretty beast. Behold, he was honorable among the 30, but attained not to the first 3, and David set him over his guard. Okay, so this is another guy who's a strong man, but he's over David's personal guard. Okay, so these are the guys who are going to guard the king in the city of Jerusalem, probably. They're not necessarily the army that's going out. It's like the Republican Guard, if you will. Also, the valiant men of the armies were Asahel, the brother of Joab, Elhanan, the son of Dodo. So notice he's saying the valiant men of the armies. So if we look at valiant men, the Gibor of the armies, okay? So the strong men of the armies. So these would be again probably military commanders. Asahel, the brother of Joab, Elhanan, the son of Dodo, the Bethlehemite, Shemoth, the Harite, Helez, the Pelonite, Ira, the son of Ikesh, the Tekoite, Abiezer, the Antothite, Sibbecai, the Hushathite, Eli, the Ahohite, Mahahari, the Netophathite, Heled, the son of Bana, the Netophathite, Ithai, the son of Ribai, Gibeah, that pertained to the children of Benjamin, Benaiah, the Parathonite, Hiriah of the brooks of Gash, Abiel, the Arbathite, Asmavath of Baharumite, Eliabah, the Shalonabonite, the sons of Hashem, the Gizonite, Jonathan, the son of Shagi, the Harite, Ahiham, the son of Sakar, the Harahite, Ephalel, the son of Hephel, the son, the Mecharathite, Ajihah, the Pelonite, Hezro, the Carmelite, Narai, the son of Ezbai, Joel, the brother of Nathan, Mithbar, the son of Haggai, Zelek, the Ammonite, Netharai, the Berothite, the armor bearer of Joab, the son of Zariah, Ira, the Ithrite, Gareb, the Ithrite, Uriah, the Hittite. So this is Uriah, whose wife David steals. He is one of his commanders. Zabad, the son of Ahalai. So Adonai, the son of Shiza, the Reubenite, the captain of the Reubenites, and 30 with him. Hanan, the son of Makkah, and Joshaphat, the Mithnite, Uzziah, the Ashtarothite, Shammah, and Jaleel, the sons of Hothan, the Arorite, Jediel, the son of Shimri, and Joah, his brother, the Tezite, Eliel the Mavathite, Jerubai and Josaphiah, the sons of Elnam and Ithma the Moabite, Eliel and Obed and Jeziel the Moabite. So these 30 dudes, remember he's got 30 and then he's got 3, are going to be basically the breakdown of military commanders over David's army. And probably these guys were all with him with smaller bands of men underneath them when David originally had like 300 or hundreds of guys who were loyal to him while Saul was chasing him, okay? These guys are going to be rewarded with military command when David is finally king, okay? Because they clung to him first. And that's why you see Uriah the Hittite, whose wife he's eventually going to steal, as one of his OG mighty men, his strong men, okay? Probably Uriah is commanding a band of Hittites. And some of these guys are going to be like Philistines and Moabites and stuff like this. See? Ithma the Moabite, okay? We see a Reubenite, we see a Hittite. And so what you have is these are basically people who probably were either defected to David or they were facing death, and they said they'd serve David. See Zelek the Ammonite. But probably a lot of these guys defected to David. Remember, David has Moabite relatives because Ruth was a Moabite. Okay? We see a Carmelite, but we're seeing people who are basically, these are sub-tribes of Israel for the most part, but some of them are foreigners. Okay? They're basically mercenaries. That's essentially who their go-tos are. Now, these are they that came to David at Ziklag while he yet kept himself close because Saul the son of Kish, and they were among the mighty men, helpers of the war. Okay? So again, they were among the Gibborim, helpers of the war. So these are the guys who came to David when he was at Ziklag. Remember, he's going to start out in a cave, and he's going to be hiding there, and he's got bands of men, and he's in the mountains of Hebron. Then he's going to go to Ziklag, which city is going to be given to him by the king of Gath, and he's going to stay there. Okay, so once he stays there, these are the guys who come to him. He said they're armed with bows. They could use both the right hand and the left, hurling stones and shooting arrows out of a bull, even Saul's brethren of Benjamin. So these are, remember, the Benjamins were known for being ambidextrous and being a great shot with a sling. Well, these guys could shoot bows and arrows and sling stones. They were pretty awesome. And David likes stone slingers because he's a stone slinger. So the chief was Ahiezer, then Joash, the sons of Shammah and the Gibeathite, and Jeziel and Pelet, the sons of Azimath, and Berekah and Jehu, the Antothite, and Ismaiah the Gibeonite, the mighty man among the 30 and over the 30, and Jeremiah and Jaziel and Johanan and Jozabad the Gederathite, and Eluzai and Jeremoth and Belaliah and Shemariah and Shephatiah and the Haruphathite, and Elkanah and Josiah and Azrael and Jozer and Jashobim the Korites, and Jola and Zebediah and the sons of Jerome and Gadar and the Gadites that there separated themselves unto David into the hold of the wilderness, men of might and men fit for war of the battle, that could handle shield and buckler, whose faces were like the faces of lions, where shifters rose upon the mountain. So you're going to see a lot of people defect to David. Remember, Benjamin is already tight, but most of these people are going to stay loyal to Saul until David is king because they took oaths to Saul, okay? It's not necessarily that they're against David, it's just that they took oaths and Saul's their legit king. David understands this, okay? Now, these other guys, remember Gad and Reuben, the Reubenites, these people coming to him, they're on the other side of the Jordan River, and so they're not as close with the house of Benjamin and stuff like that. If you remember, you're going to have mixed marriage between the Manassites, who are on the other side of the river, so think of the house of Gilead and half tribe of Manasseh, and the people of Hebron, which are Judahites that go back to Hezron, and this is all while they're still in Egypt. So they have very old marital ties between the people on the other side of the river, the Manassites, and David, okay? But these Gileadites are not anti-Saul necessarily. These are the guys who go rescue Saul's body, okay? They're just known for warriors, and they're very tight with Judah, okay? So Ezra the first, Obadiah the second, Eliab the third, Mishma the fourth, Jeremiah the fifth, Attai the sixth, Eliah the seventh, Johan the eighth, Elzabad the ninth, Jeremiah the tenth, Mechabah the 11th. These were the sons of Gad, captains of the host. One of the least was over 100, and the greatest over 1,000. Okay, so these men commanded either 100 or 1,000 men. In other words, they all had men under them. They weren't just guys who came to him. These were guys who were commanders of bands of men already. These are they that went over the Jordan in the first month when it had overflown all its banks, and they put to flight them of the valleys, both toward the east and toward the west. And there came the children of Benjamin and Judah to the hold unto David. And David went out to meet them and answered and said unto them, If you come peaceably unto me to help me, mine heart shall be knit unto you. But if you come to betray me to mine enemies, seeing that there is no wrong in my hands, the God of our fathers look thereon and rebuke it. So he calls them out in the name of Jesus. Are you for me or against me? Then the Spirit came upon Amasai, who was chief of these captains. Thine are we, David, and on thy sign, thou son of Jesse. Peace, peace be unto you, and peace be unto thine helpers, for thy God helpeth thee. Then David received them and made them captains of the band. So if you remember, David is going to go get a wife from the king of Geshur. And Geshur is going to be an Aramean, because these guys are married in with the Manassites. And that's how he is going to have Absalom, his firstborn son. So this is why he's getting in with the people on the other side of the river who are not as tight with Saul, because they're on the other side of the river. And Saul is probably not able to project power to help them with their enemies, because he is mostly dealing with the Philistines throughout his reign. Okay? So he's not doing a whole lot for them, so why should they do a whole lot for him? And there fell some of Manasseh to David and came with the Philistines against Saul to battle. But notice he said, and there fell some of Manasseh to David when he came with the Philistines against Saul to battle. So remember, he was going to come to the Philistines. But they helped him not, for the lords of the Philistines upon advisement sent him away, and he will saying he will fall to his master Saul in the jeopardy of our head. So David actually showed up to fight against Saul for the Philistines. It wasn't probably the wisest move, but the Lord spared him from it. The Philistines sent him away. And he went to Ziklag, and there fell to him of Manasseh, Adnah, Jozabad, and Jediel, and Mechiel, and Jozabad, and Elihu, and Ziklag, captains of thousands that were of Manasseh. So when David shows up to fight against Saul and then goes away to Ziklag, these Manassites, who were over thousands, came with him. So it wasn't just David and his few men, okay? He's already gathering thousands to him before he becomes king. And Saul's not going to die in this battle, but he's going to die in a battle shortly thereafter. And they helped David against the band of the rovers. So remember, the Amalekites came in and took all the wives and children from Ziklag. These guys helped, for they were all mighty men of valor and captains of the host, okay? So you had all his guys who were tired from going back and forth, and then you had the Manassites, who are fresh, and they show up and they're like, let's go get your wives and children back. For at that time by day there came to David to help him, until there was a great host like the host of God. So once David's at Ziklag and Saul is going down, okay? Now here's the thing. If all these guys stayed loyal to Saul, would Saul have died? Probably not. But they're defecting to David because they see that God is with David, God is not with Saul, okay? And they also probably see the integrity of David as he goes away and doesn't fight Saul. And that's the Philistines doing, but it's the Lord's doing ultimately. And these are the numbers of the bands that were greatly armed for war and came to David at Hebron to turn the kingdom of Saul to him according to the word of the Lord. The children of Judah that bear the shield were 6,800, ready armed for the war. The children of Simeon, mighty men. Again, these are Gibor. Okay, so you want to understand, I'm going to say this until I'm blue in the face. The Gibor have nothing to do with Nephilim. These are just valiant men, warlords. Okay? Let's see. The children of Simeon, mighty men of valor for war, 7,100. Remember, Simeon is right down there by Ziklag, so they're loyal to David. The children of Levi, 4,600. Remember, Saul killed the priests, so you got a bunch of Levites defecting to David. Jehoiada was the leader of the Aaronites, and with him were 3,700. So these Levites are taking up arms. They're not loyal to Saul at all, because he literally kills the priest at the tabernacle. He blew it. And Zadok, the young men, mighty of valor, in his father's house, 22 captains. So Zadok, who is going to become the priest under David before the temple is built, and the priesthood is going to descend from him, and it's Zadok the second who is going to marry in with the line of David. He actually is taking up arms and fighting with David. And the children of Benjamin, the kindred of Saul, 3,000, for hitherto the greatest part of them kept the ward of the house of Saul. Now, remember, the Levites were not supposed to go out to war. That was not their calling. However, Saul killed the priest. And so the Levites are now taking up arms and gathering themselves to David. Screw this. They're not carrying out their priestly duties during the reign of Saul because he killed the priest, and that's why he's going to a witch to get advice instead of the priest. He killed the priest. Oops, my bad. And the children of Benjamin, the kindred of Saul, 3,000. The hitherto the greatest part of them had kept the ward of the house of Saul. For hitherto, that means from that time, the greatest part of them had kept the ward of the house of Saul. In other words, they've guarded the house of Saul. So he's getting 3,000 Benjamites, and the children of Ephraim were 20,800, famous throughout the house for their fathers. So 20,800, a big chunk of the house of Ephraim is for him. And of the half-tribe of Manasseh, 18,000 were expressed by name to come and make David king. So these are people who come to him right off the bat, okay? They're going to become his permanent standing army. And the children of Issachar, which were men that had understanding of the times and know what Israel ought to do, the heads of them were 200, and all their brethren were at their commandment. So 200, these are the Issacharites, were known for apparently being wise men, okay? They understood the times and knew what Israel ought to do. In other words, these guys were probably surveyors of the geopolitical scenario all around them, and they had a lot of wisdom to offer David. This is probably why. Where is Issachar located? Issachar did have pretty boss guys among the judges. But they're right up here by the Sea of Galilee. And Galilee is typically where people are going to come in from if they're going to invade Israel. You see Asher's right up here. That's basically they're covering the territory of what is going to become Phoenicia or Lebanon. So they have the Sidonians and the Tyrians among them, which are sailing out all over the place. So they're probably getting word from abroad. Dan is going to be just north of them. I believe it's right up here. And the main highways coming in are going to be around here. So they're probably getting a lot of intel from abroad. And that's why they're so wise and hip to the times. And this is of Zebulun, such as went forth to battle, expert in war with all the instruments of war, 50,000, which could keep rank. They were not of double heart, so they were a well-organized army. They could keep rank. They were not of double heart, so they were fully for him. So 50,000, that's a nice size army. And of Naphtali, the 1,000 captains, and with them with shield and spear, 37,000. So this is 1,000 captains, and with shield and spear, 37,000. So these men were broken down by divisions down to very small numbers, where guys were probably having platoons underneath them that could be anywhere from 20 guys to 100 guys or whatever. And the Danites, expert in war, 28,600. So you still have a substantial number of Danites. Remember, there are still Danites who dwelled right at the foothills of Judah. Not all the Danites went north and sailed away. And of Asher, such as went forth to battle, 40,000. So the Asherites basically stayed and controlled most of that realm of the Sidonians until the Sidonians are going to make a comeback because of really Jezebel and all that. They're more of a priesthood by that point. They're going to go off and start Carthage, but they're still there. The Tyrians are not, people of Tyre and the people of the Sidonians are two different peoples. On the other side of the Jordan, the Reubenites and the Gadites and the half-tribe of Manasseh, and all the manner of instruments of war of the battle, 120,000. All these men of war could keep rank, came with perfect heart to Hebron to make David king over all Israel, and all the rest and all of Israel of one heart to make David king, and they were with David 3 days eating and drinking, for their brethren had prepared for them. Moreover, they that were nigh, even unto Issachar and Zebulun and Naphtali, brought bread on asses and camels and on mules and oxen and meal, cakes and figs and bunches of raisins and wine and oil and oxen and sheep abundantly, for there was joy in Israel. So they were in a big inauguration party for David in Hebron. Now remember, David is becoming king in Hebron. He doesn't yet have Jerusalem. They're skipping over Ishbaal. The reason these armies are big, there's a lot of guys coming to him, but it's not everybody, is because Ishbaal is gathering people under himself. He still has Abner, who had been the commander of all of Israel's army, probably holding guys who are loyal to him, trying to see if they can stand with David. Okay, and so you have these seeds of a break-off of northern Israel for a while, and you have descendants who probably were not as loyal to David, but kind of just fell in line. Okay. David consulted with the captains of thousands and hundreds, and with every leader. And David consulted with the captains of the thousands and the hundreds and with every leader. And David said to all the congregation of Israel, if it seemed good unto you that it be of the Lord our God, let us send abroad unto our brethren everywhere, that which are left in the land of Israel, and also the priests and Levites, which are in their cities and suburbs, that they may gather themselves unto us. So now they've got the priesthood. They're going to get all the Levites. And the Levites, because they're spread in all these cities, they're kind of the cultural glue holding the place together. So what they probably, a lot of them end up being is like city officials and administrators and stuff like that. That's what I would imagine. Let us bring again the ark of our God to us, for we inquired not of it as in the days of Saul. And all the congregation said they would do so, for the thing was right now in the eyes of all the people. So David gathered all Israel together from Shihor of Egypt. So what does Shihor mean? Shihor means dark, turbid. I don't know. Even into the entering of Hamath to bring the ark of God from Kiriath Jearim. So in other words, Hamath is way up north. That's where the farthest northern tribes of like Asher and Naphtali and all that. So it's kind of a major northern city outside of Dan. And David went up and all Israel and Bela, that is to Kiriath Jearim, which belonged to Judah, and to bring up thence the ark of the God the Lord that dwelt between the cherubims, whose name is called upon it. And they carried the ark of God in a new cart in the house of Abinadab, and Uzzah and Ahio drave the cart. And right here, they're screwing up. God gave them specific instructions in the law on how to carry the ark, but they were not known for consulting the law that well. So, what you're going to have is them following the tradition of the Philistines. There is something prophetically significant here. I'm going to let you guys chew on that yourself. They're following the tradition of the Philistines, who drove it up on a new cart driven by fresh oxen who had never driven a cart before when they gave the ark back. They thought that was the most honorable way to carry it, and God didn't strike down upon them because they didn't know better. But the Israelites know better. Remember, when God gives you commands, that's what he expects you to keep. He doesn't expect you to keep commands he never gave. He's not going to beat up on you for not knowing things he didn't tell you to do. And David and all Israel played before God with all their might, and with singing, with harps, and with psalteries, and with timbrels, and with cymbals, and with trumpets. And when they came into the threshing floor of Chidon, Uzzah put forth the hand to hold the ark, for the oxen stumbled. So the oxen shook it, and he made sure the ark didn't fall down, thought he was doing a good thing, but the anger of the Lord was kindled against Uzzah, and he smote him because he put his hand to the ark, and there died before God. If you had 4 Levites carrying that thing on poles like you were supposed to, you wouldn't have had to deal with stumbling oxen and it possibly falling off a cart. Worst thing that would have happened if they stumbled is they would have set it down. And David was displeased because the Lord had made a breach on Uzzah, therefore the place is called Perez Uzzah. You're going to see a lot of places with Perez in them. You're going to see a lot of places with Abel in them. Abel means mourning, okay? Which usually means probably somebody as famous is buried there, because they're going to call the place where Jacob is buried Abel Misraim because of all the Egyptians mourning for him. The place where Joseph is buried. Okay, it's called Abel Mizraim because he is the mourning of Egypt. Okay, so the people mourning them, you're going to see probably famous people buried there. Perez means breach of Uzzah, so this is where Uzzah was taken down. We're going to see another place called Baal Perez because that's where they abandoned their Baals, their gods, and run away. And they're going to burn them. So David was afraid of God that day, saying, how shall I bring the ark of God home to me? And David brought the ark, not the ark home to the city of David, but carried it outside of the house of Obed-Edom. Obed means destruction. It's based on the same word of Abaddon. Edom, destruction of Edom. His name means destruction of Edom, the Gittite. And I believe Gittite means might be from Gath. I could be wrong. So, and the ark remained in the house of Obed-Edom in his house 3 months. And the Lord blessed the house of Obed-Edom of all that he had. Then King Hiram of Tyre sent messengers to David along with cedar logs and masons and carpenters to build a house for him. David then perceived the Lord to establish him as king over Israel, and that his kingdom was highly exalted for the sake of the people of Israel. David took more wives in Jerusalem, and David became the father of more sons and daughters. And the name of the children that he had in Jerusalem was Shammua, Shobab, Nathan, and Solomon. All these 4 are from Bathsheba, and Solomon's the youngest. Okay, Nathan is going to be the one where Christ comes from. Eber, Elishua, Elipet, Noga, Nepheg, Japhia, Elishama, Beliada, and Eliphet. When the Philistines heard David had been anointed king over all Israel, all the Philistines went up in search of David, and David heard of it and went out against it. Now the Philistines had come and made a raid in the valley of Rephaim. David inquired of God, shall I go up against the Philistines? Will you give them a hand? The Lord said, go up, and I'll give them in your hand. So I went up to Baal Perazim, and David, so he's probably using the Urim and Thummim here, magic 8-ball, and the answer was yes, go get them. Therefore that place is called Baal Perazim, because they abandoned their gods there, and David's command, they were burned. So they burned all their idols. Isn't that nice? Once again, the Philistines made a raid in the valley. When David again inquired of God, he said, shall you go up after them, go around, and come on the opposite side of the balsam tree? So the Lord's like, yeah, go, but go this way. So now he's getting a specific prophetic word from the Lord. Who's giving it? Remember, David has prophetic giftings. It's not necessarily coming directly to David, but if he inquired of God, that's usually at the ark or at the to the priests. And the priest could be getting a prophetic word. He's got other prophetic people in his cadre. You're going to find out his singers and stuff like that. And then he's got Gad the seer and Nathan. There's a bunch of prophets running around. So he says, when you hear the sound of the marching of the tops of the balsam trees, then go out for battle, for God has gone out before you to strike down the army of the Philistines. David did as God commanded him. They struck down the Philistine army from Gibeon to Gezer. So Gibeon, remember, is going to be that Canaanite city. I always get Gibeon and Gibeon mixed up. Gezer is where old Gezers dwell. The fame of David went out into all the lands, and the Lord brought the fear of him on all the nations. David built houses for himself in the city of David. Houses. Because he's got many wives, right? He don't put them all in a room together. They're not a harem. These are wives. They get their own houses. And he prepared a place for the ark, and God pitched a tent for it. David commanded that no one but the Levites were to carry the ark of God, for the Lord had chosen them to carry the ark of the Lord and minister for him forever. Remember how he wrote that down for you in the law? Oh, yes, I forgot. David assembled all Israel in Jerusalem to bring up the ark of the Lord to its place, for he had prepared for it. And David gathered together the sons of Aaron and the Levites, the sons of Kohath, Uriel the chief with 120 of his kindred, the sons of Merari, Azariah the chief with 220 of his kindred, the sons of Gershom, Joel the chief with 130 of his kindred, the sons of Elzaphan and Shemaiah the chief with 200 of his kindred, the sons of Hebron, Eliel the chief and 80 of his kindred, the sons of Uziel, Amminadab the priest and 112 of his kindred. David summoned the priests Zadok and Abiathar and the Levites Uriel, Asaiah, Joel, Shemaiah, Eliab, and Amminadab. And he said, you are the heads of the families of the Levites. Sanctify yourself and your kindred, that you may bring up the ark of the Lord and the God of Israel in place that I have prepared for it. Because you did not carry it the first time, the Lord our God burst out against us because we did not give it proper care. So the priests and the Levites sanctified themselves to bring up the ark of the covenant of the Lord God of Israel. And the Levites carried the ark of God on their shoulders with the poles. And Moses had commanded according to the word of the Lord. David also commanded the chiefs of the priests to appoint their kindred as singers to play the musical instruments on harps and lyres and cymbals and raise a sound of joy. So the Levites appointed Heman, the son of Joel. Remember, this is going to be a descendant of Samuel. And his kindred, Asaph, the son of Berechiah, and the sons of Merari. And their kindred, Ethan, the son of Cushiah. So Ethan and Asaph, if you read the Psalms carefully, these are going to be guys who have Ethan the Ezrahite and Asaph the seer are going to write Psalms. You're going to see them in the Psalms. Heman, I think, is going to be one of them too. And then with them, the kindred of the second order, Zechariah, Jeziel, Shemirvoth, Jael, Uni, Eliah, Maniah, Messiah, Matthiah, Eliphalu, and Micaniah, and the gatekeepers, Obed-Edom, and Jael. And the singers, Heman, Asaph, and Ethan, were to sound bronze cymbals. So these guys all have psalms. Also, when you hear of the songs of the sons of Korah, these are these guys. So these guys didn't just sing. They also wrote psalms, which were themselves theological and prophetic. Okay? So they were going to play harps, and Matthiah, Eliphalu, Micaniah, Obed-Edom, Jael, and Azariah were to lead with lyres, according to Shemaiah. So they have harps and lyres. I believe a lyre is like a smaller harp, and harps are bigger harps. I don't know. Chaniah, the leader of the Levites in music, was to direct the music, for he understood it. So David was big on music. Remember, he's a psalm writer, and he's making musical instruments, and he's kind of a musical genius, and he prophesies through song. Well, David does this, and I'll be honest, his songs are mostly about David. But they're about the Lord, too. They're about all the drama in his life. And these other guys are going to sing songs, and they're going to be developing on things the prophets say in those songs. They're going to be developed. They're going to have a song of Moses, which is going to be one they sing that they've been keeping from back in the day. We have other psalms that they're going to write, and I believe it's mostly the I want to say the third book. There's 5 books of the Psalms, and it's the third or fourth book that is going to have a bunch of songs by the other guys. But the point is that most of these Psalms are written in the days of David. Okay. So Berechiah and Elkanah were to be gatekeepers for the ark. So these are going to be also descendants of Samuel. Shebaniah, Josaphat, Nethaniel, Amasai, Zechariah, Benaiah, and Eleazar the priest were to blow the trumpets before the ark of God. Obed-Edom and Jehiah were also to be gatekeepers for the ark. So remember, Samuel is a Levite of the sons of Korah. Remember Korah's rebellion, but the sons who don't rebel, their ancestors are going to be loyal to the priesthood, and they're also going to be loyal to the house of David. So David and the elders of Israel and the commanders of the thousands went to bring up the Ark of the Covenant before the Lord in the house of Obed-Edom with rejoicing. So these guys are the worship team. They're the worship team, okay? This is why we like hymns. This is why we like songs, because David understood songs. Moses understood songs. In fact, these guys, I believe it's Moses that becomes the basis of the muses and museus of the Greeks, which is where the word music comes from. It seems to be based on Moses because Museus, they believe, was the son of the Muses, and he taught people to remember religious beliefs through song, which Moses did and David did. And David seems to be the other guy, which is Orpheus, which means the orphan. He's the orphan guy because remember, he's the son of Saul who's chased out, and you have all these legends about him trying to go back to Hades and get his wife. Well, David writes songs about going to Hades and back because they're about Christ. And he has to go get his wife back because Saul gives his wife away to somebody else. So I believe Orpheus and Museus are actually Moses and David, and these legends are developed by the Danites and the Greeks afterward. So David and the elders of Israel and the commanders of the thousands went up to bring the Ark of the Covenant to the Lord from the house of Obed-Edom with rejoicing. And because God helped the Levites who were carrying the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord, they sacrificed 7 bulls and 7 rams. David was clothed with a robe of fine linen, and also were all the Levites who were carriers of the ark, and the singers, and Shaniah, and the leader of the music, and the singers, and David wore a linen ephod. So I want you to notice this. David is clothed with a robe. He's not naked. He has a robe of fine linen and a linen ephod, which is essentially a loincloth. Okay? David is dressed like the Levites dressed. Now remember the guy who is grabbed in the Garden of Gethsemane and runs away naked. That's John. John is clothed just like this because John is a priest in training. There's actually a guy who is recorded in Eusebius' church history who was an elder from Ephesus in the time of John who said that John was in fact a Levitical priest. So John was a Levitical priest. That's why he has all that inside intel on what's going on in the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin is basically made up of Pharisees, which are descended from the house of David, and Sadducees, which are descended from the house of Zadok. Okay? These are essentially the royal house and the priestly house form the Sanhedrin, and the idea is they're stewarding Israel until the Messiah comes. That's why they were formed in these days, okay? But they're going to see to themselves and not want the Messiah to take their power away. So all Israel brought it's like they're like the steward of Gondor. They're denying the return of the king. Okay? Just like Shebna the steward who gets kicked out for Eliakim, the son of righteousness, and Jesus kicks them out. And Eliakim, which means the resurrection of God, takes their place. And the apostles with him. So all Israel brought up the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord with shouting, with the sounds of the horn and trumpets and cymbals, and made loud music on harps and lyres. And the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord came to the city of David. Michal, daughter of Saul, looked out the window and saw David leaping and dancing, and she despised him in her heart. Now, she's probably got some spite for David, not just because of this. Okay, notice it says saw him leaping, dancing, and she despised him in his heart. It's not because of this. Remember, he leaves because Saul wants to kill him. Now, in the house of David, Michal is cute and sweet and godly and loves the stuffings out of David and finally gets with David, okay? We don't know how that goes down, okay? We really don't, because Michal is Saul's daughter and she is offered up to whoever kills Goliath as a political marriage. I think she's offered before that, and then David has to go get her again, okay? So she's not super in the mix on who she gets to marry in the first place. And then after David leaves and he's on the house with Saul, Saul gives her away to another guy, which seems to be a political marriage. However, that guy seems to really love her. And he is not on the outs with Saul, so she's actually forming a relationship with bond with him over years. Remember, she's going to get with David, and Saul is going to try to get rid of David not too long after she's with him. I mean, David's probably with him for a few years, but then she's going to be with this other guy for the entire time David is on the outs, which I believe it's like a decade. Okay, so she's married to this guy for years, and then David just comes back and he's like, "You are my wife," and this is a very political marriage, and it's a power move that David takes her back. It's probably not love. It's a power move that David takes her back because she is basically the last surviving remnant of the house of Saul, her and her sister. And so David takes her and legitimizes his claim to the throne. The Ark of the Covenant. So she's not liking this already, and now he's coming up dancing with the Ark, and she's just like, yeah, I hate this guy. He's nothing but trouble for me. And the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord came to the city of David, and Michal, daughter of Saul, looked out the window, and she saw David leaping and dancing, and she despised him in his heart. They brought in the ark and set it inside the tent. So in Kings, David curses her, and she never bears children after that. They brought in the ark and set it inside the tent. David pitched it, and for they offered burnt offerings and offerings well-pleasing for God. When David had finished the burnt offerings and the offerings of well-being, when David made an end of the offerings, the burnt offerings, and the peace offerings, he blessed the people in the name of the Lord. Why do they feel the need to call the peace offerings the offerings of well-being? I don't know. And he dealt to every one of Israel, both man and woman, everyone, a loaf of bread and a good piece of fish and a flagon of wine. Here, have some food, have some meat, get drunk. And he appointed certain of the Levites to minister before the ark and the Lord, and to record and to thank and praise the Lord God of Israel. Asaph the chief, and next to him Zechariah, Jael, Shemarath, Jael, Mattathiah, Eliab, Benaiah, and Obed-Edom. So this is the same Obed-Edom who's staying with the ark. He's apparently up there with the singers. That's why it's staying at his house. And Jael with the psalteries and with the harps, but Asaph made the sound with the cymbal. Asaph was up there slamming those cymbals. He's a prophetic guy, and he's got, man, those things are ringing in his ears all the time, and he probably has a lot of ability to hear from the Lord after he goes deaf. Benaiah and Jaziel the priest with the trumpets continually before the ark of the covenant of God. Then on that day David delivered his first this psalm to thank the Lord into the hands of Asaph and his brethren. Asaph is the prophet. But David is delivering the psalm, okay? Give thanks to the Lord, call upon his name, make his name known among the deeds of the people. Sing unto him, sing psalms unto him, talk of his wondrous works. Glory ye in his holy name, let the heart of them rejoice that seek the Lord. Seek the Lord in his strength. Remember, they're saying Yahweh. They're not just saying generic Lord, that's Adonai. This is Yahweh they're saying when you see the capital L-O-R-D, okay? Seek the Lord in his strength, seek Yahweh in his strength, seek his face continually. And just so you know, in Hebrew, Yahweh means I am. Yah means I am. Way means that I am. Yahweh means I am that I am. Okay? So people who are trying to do this weird thing about how it's Yahovah or Yahweh. Yahweh means I am that I am. That's where the name comes from. Hayah. So Yah means I am. The Ha-Yah, the I am. So I'm sorry, He-Yah means he is. And Hawa, so you see, he will be. So Ha is the he, Yah, he is. So Yahweh seems to be he is, he will be. So it's like a third person expression of I am that I am. Anyway, remember all his marvelous works, O you seed of Israel, his servant, you children of Jacob, his chosen ones, for he is Yahweh our God. His judgments are in all the earth. Be mindful always of his covenant, the word which he commanded 1,000 generations, even the covenant which he made with Abraham and his oath unto Isaac. He has confirmed the same to Jacob for a law and to Israel for an everlasting covenant, saying unto thee, I will give the land of Canaan, the lot of your inheritance. But ye were but a few, even a few, and strangers in it. And when they went from nation to nation, and from one kingdom to another people, he suffered no men to do their wrong, but he reproved kings for their sakes. So he's going through what happened with Abraham and Isaac, saying, touch not mine anointed, and do my prophets no harm. So notice, touch not my anointed is not your pastor. It's about Abraham and Isaac. And so David doesn't touch the Lord's anointed, which is the king. Sing unto the Lord all the earth, and show forth from day to day his salvation. Declare the glory among the heathen, and marvelous his works among the nations. For great is the Lord, and greatly to be praised, and he is to be feared above all gods. For all the gods of the people are idols, but the Lord made the heavens. So all the gods of the people are idols. Elil. Elil. El-Il. It's interesting because the church fathers have a version of that as all the people, the gods of the idols are demons. Idols are demons. They're considered demons who are incarnated into a wooden object or whatever. Can't see or hear nor talk. Glory and honor in his presence, strength and gladness are in his place. Give unto the Lord, ye kindreds of all the people, give unto the Lord glory and strength. Give unto the Lord the glory due to his name, bring an offering, come before him, worship the Lord in the beauty of his holiness. Fear before him all the earth, and the world shall be stable, that it not be moved. Let the heavens be glad and the earth rejoice. Let the men say the nations, the Lord reigneth. Let the sea roar and the fullness thereof. Let the fields rejoice and all that is in them. Then shall the trees of wood sing out the presence of the Lord, because he has come to judge the earth. O give thanks unto the Lord, for he is good, his mercy endures forever. And say, save us, O God of our salvation, and gather us together and deliver us from the heathen, that we may give thanks to thy holy name and glory to thy praise. Blessed be the Lord God of Israel forever and ever. And all the people said, Amen, and praise the Lord. So he left there before the ark of the covenant Asaph and his brethren to minister before the ark continually, as every day's work required. So the ark, this is before the temple's built, is in a tent there, and Asaph and his brethren, the singers, are chilling before it. And Obed-Edom with their brethren, 68, Obed-Edom and the sons of Jeduthun and Joshua to be porters. These are people who carried stuff. And Zadok the priest and the brethren of the priest before the tabernacle of the Lord in the high place that was at Gibeon, to offer burnt offerings unto the Lord upon the altar of the burnt offering continually morning and evening, and to do according to all that is written in the law of the Lord which he commanded Israel. So he's got the ark in Jerusalem, but the tabernacle is still at Gibeon. So they're doing the work of the tabernacle, but not with the ark there. That's kind of weird. And then with them, Heman and Jeduthun and the rest that were chosen, who are expressed by name, to give thanks to the Lord, because his mercy endures forever. So they are singing praise and worship for the Lord. That's their full-time job. And with them, Heman and Jeduthun and the trumpets and the cymbals and those that should make a sound with musical instruments of God, and the sons of Jehudah were porters. And all the people departed, every man to his house, and David returned to bless his house. I like singing praise and worship, but I don't know if I want to do it 24/7. I think that'd be not my bag. I think I'd want to research stuff instead. I'd probably be a scribe. Might show up to sing on song day. Now it came to pass, as David sat in the house, that David said to Nathan the prophet, Lo, I dwell in the house of cedar, but the ark of the Lord covenant remains under curtains. Then Nathan said unto David, Do all that is in thy heart, for God is with thee. And it came to pass in the same sight, the word of the Lord came to Nathan, saying, Go and tell my servant David, Thus saith the Lord, You shall not build me a house to dwell in. Listen carefully, church. For I have not dwelt in a house since the day that I was brought up in Israel to this day. I have gone from tent to tent, and from one tabernacle to another. Wheresoever I have walked with Israel, spake I not a word to any of the judges of Israel, whom I commanded to feed my people, saying, Why have you not built me a house of cedars? Now therefore, thus shalt thou say to my servant David, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, I took thee from the sheepcote, even from following the sheep, and thou shouldest be ruler over my people Israel, and I have been with thee wherever thou hast walked, and I have cut off thine enemies from before thee, and made thee a name like the name of the great men that are in the earth. David was a truly great king by world standards. Just because he didn't have a massive imperial territory, you need to understand he was a warlord. The Assyrians were not messing with him. The Egyptians were not messing with him. Everyone was either sending him gifts or leaving him alone. Okay, he was a serious military king. He was BA. Also, I will ordain a place for my people Israel. I will plant them, and they shall dwell in their place, and shall be moved no more. Neither shall the children of wickedness waste them any more, as at the beginning. So, in other words, they're constantly fleeing from their homes because of the Philistines in the surrounding enemies are constantly invading them throughout the book of Judges. God's like, this is done. That's not going to happen anymore. So God is now completing the cleansing of the land that they were supposed to do when they entered under Joshua and afterwards. Since that time I commanded judges to be over my people Israel. Moreover, I will subdue all thine enemies. Furthermore, I tell thee that the Lord will build thee a house. See what he said? The Lord will build thee a house. What is the ultimate fulfillment of this? It's not Solomon, it's Christ. The Lord will build thee a house. The house of David is the body of Christ. And it shall come to pass when thy days are expired. Remember, Solomon is king when David's still living. When thy days are expired, that thou go to be with thy fathers, that I will raise up a seed after thee. After David dies, he will raise up a seed after him. Okay? So this is not Solomon. Which shall be of thy sons, and I will establish his kingdom. This cannot be Solomon. He shall build me a house, and I will establish his throne forever. This is not Solomon. This is Jesus. But David's not going to get it, and he's going to apply this to Solomon and tell Solomon it's about him. And that's why Solomon's going to build the temple. God's going to allow it because it's a minor type fulfillment, but the major type is Christ. It was never about the temple in Jerusalem. It was about the church. I will be his father, he shall be my son, and I will not take my mercy away from him as I took it away from him that was before thee. But I will settle him in my house and in my kingdom forever, and his throne shall be established forevermore. This is not Solomon. According to all these words and according to his vision, so did Nathan speak to David. And David the king came and sat before the Lord and said, Who am I, O Lord, and what is mine house that thou hast brought me hitherto? And yet this was a small thing in thy eyes, O God, for thou hast spoken in thy servant's house for a great while to come, and hast regarded my servant, according to the estate of a man of high degree, O God. What can David speak more than thee for the honor of thy servant? For thou knowest thy servant, O Lord, for thy servant's sake, and according to thine heart. Hast thou done all this greatness in making known these great things? O Lord, there is none like thee, neither is any God besides thee, according to all that we have heard with our ears. And what one nation on the earth is like thy people Israel, whom the Lord went to redeem for his own people, to make thee a name of greatness and terribleness, by driving out nations from before thy people, who thou hast redeemed out of Egypt. For thy people Israel didst make thine own people forever, and thou, O Lord, becamest their God. Therefore now, Lord, Yahweh, let the thing that thou hast spoken concerning thy servant and concerning his house be established forever, as thou hast said. Let it be established, that thy name may be magnified forever, and the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, even the God of Israel. Let the house of David, thy servant, be established before thee. For thou, O my God, hast told thy servant that thou wilt build for him a house. Thou wilt build for him a house. Before thy servant has found in his heart to pray before thee. And now, Lord, thou art God, and hast promised this goodness to thy servant. Now therefore let it please thee to bless the house of thy servant, that it may be before thee forever. For thou blessed, O Lord, and it shall be blessed forever. Now after it came to pass that David smote the Philistines and subdued them, and took Gath and her towns out of the hands of the Philistines. So the king that was once David was loyal to him, he probably incorporates that king, because he's going to have these people called the Pelethites and the Cherethites, who are Philistines, as part of like his royal guard. So that king, he probably he conquered the other Philistines, but he probably incorporated this one peacefully into his kingdom. That would be my guess. And he smote Moab, and the Moabites became David's servants and brought gifts. And he smote Had-Rezar, king of Zobah, unto Hamath, and went to establish his dominion by the river Euphrates. And David took from him 1,000 chariots and 7,000 horsemen and 20,000 footmen. David also houghed all the chariot horses, so he hamstrung them, but reserved for them 100 chariots. So basically, when he's hamstringing them, what he's doing is assuring that they can be used for plowing, maybe walking, but they can't pull a chariot. I think that's what they're doing. And when the Syrians of Damascus came to help Had-Rezar, king of Zobah, David slew of the Syrians 22,000 men. And David put garrisons in Syria, Damascus, and the Syrians became, so remember, these are Arameans, became David's servants and brought gifts. Thus the Lord preserved David whithersoever he went. And David took the shields of gold that were on the servants of Hadarezer and brought them to Jerusalem. Likewise from Tibhah and from Shun, to the cities of Hadarezer, brought David very much brass, wherewith Solomon made the brazen sea and the pillars and the vessels of brass. Now when Tau, the king of Hamath, heard how David had smitten the host of Hadarezer, king of Zobah, so remember Hamath's been destroyed and rebuilt a couple times over the course of the past 400 years, almost 500. But it's always the Hamathites are Canaanites, so they're still there. He sent Hadoram the son to King David to inquire of his welfare and to congratulate him because he had fought against Hadarezer and smitten him. For Hadarezer had a war with Tob, and with him all manners and vessels of gold and silver and brass. Them also King David dedicated to the Lord with silver and gold, and he brought from these nations, from Edom and from Moab and from the children of Ammon and the Philistines and from Amalek. Moreover, Abishai the son of Zeruiah slew the Edomites in the valley of Salt, 18,000. So remember, he's a commander of a bunch of dudes. And he put garrisons in Edom, and all the Edomites became David's servants, and the Lord preserved David whithersoever he went. And David reigned over all Israel and executed judgment and justice among all the people. And Joab the son of Zeruiah was over the host, and Jehoshaphat the son of Ahitub the recorder, and Zadok the son of Ahitub, and Abimelech the son of Abiathar were priests, and Shavsha was scribe. And Benaiah the son of Jehoiada was over the Cherethites and the Pelethites, and the son of David were chief about the king. So notice you have a recorder and a scribe. So I would assume a scribe is basically like their official record keeper for the priesthood, and the recorder is probably the official record keeper for the royal house. That's what I would assume. And probably the source material for Kings and Chronicles largely come from these guys, combined with the prophets. And Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada, was over the Cherethites and Pelethites. These are the Philistines that are loyal to David. So he's got a Judahite over them. But these are probably people who were once loyal to Agag. That would be my guess. And probably other Philistines that became mercenaries rather than... Because they were pretty well-known fighters. They were fighting all over Crete, and they're originally from Egypt, and they took over that region and killed a bunch of Nephilim and stuff like that. Now it came to pass after this that Nahash, the king of the children of Ammon, died, and his son reigned in his stead. And David said, I will show kindness to Hanun, the son of Nahash, because his father showed kindness to me. And David sent messengers to comfort him concerning his father. So the servants of David came in the land of the children of Ammon, and Hanun to comfort him. But the princes of the children of Ammon said to Hanun, Thinkest thou that David doth honor thy father, and he has sent comforters unto thee? Are not his servants come to search to thee to search and to overthrow and to spout the land? Wherefore Hanun took David's servants and shaved them and cut off their garments in the midst, the hard by their buttocks, and sent them away. Then there were certain and told David how the men were to be served. He sent men to meet them. Let's see. Then there went certain. Let's change that to a readable translation. Oh, and he sent them away, and they departed. When David was told about it, he sent messengers to them, for they felt greatly humiliated. The king said, Remain in Jericho until your beards have grown, and then return. When the Ammonites saw that they had made themselves odious to David, Hanun and the Ammonites sent 1,000 talents of silver to hire chariots and cavalry from Mesopotamia. So Mesopotamia, usually when they say Mesopotamia, it's not going to say Mesopotamia, because that's a Greek term that comes out later. But Mesopotamia is Aram Naharim. Okay, that's this literally means Aram between the rivers. Okay, so I want you to see this. The land they call Mesopotamia is what we would call northern Mesopotamia today. That's going to be Babylon toward north, the mountains of Turkey. That's where the Aram between the rivers dwelt. Just so you know, the Assyrians are going to take them over eventually, but that's basically the center of that area is going to be where Abraham's brother dwelt. What is the name of it? Haran. Haran is going to kind of be the capital of that region. And so these people, they're Arameans, but they were related to Abraham and mixed with those people, are hired against them. The Assyrians are on the come up now, but they're not imposing their will over these people yet, I don't believe. I believe they might be Confederate, though. When David heard of it, he sent Joab and the host of mighty men and the children of Ammon come out and put the battle in array before the gate of the city, and then kings that were come by themselves were in the field. Now when Joab saw that the battle was set against him from behind, he chose out of all the choice of Israel to put them in array against the Syrians. And the rest of the people he delivered in the hand of Abishai, his brother, and they set themselves in array against the children of Ammon. And he said, if the Syrians be too strong for me, then thou shalt help me. But if the children of Ammon be too strong for thee, then I will help thee. Be of good courage, and let us behave ourselves valiantly for our people, for the cities of our God, and let the Lord do that which is good in his sight, as God wills it. So Joab and the people that were with him drew nigh before the Syrians unto battle, and they fled before him. When the children of Ammon saw that the Syrians were fled, they likewise fled before Abishai his brother and entered the city, and then Joab came to Jerusalem. When the Syrians saw that they had put to the worse before Israel, they sent messengers and drew forth the Syrians that were beyond the river, and Shophach, the captain of the host of Hadrazar, went before them. So they're getting all these Syrians from beyond the river, these Arameans. And it was told David, and they gathered all Israel and passed before Jordan and came upon them, and they set in battle array against them. So when David had put to the battle in array against the Syrians, they fought with him. And the Syrians fled before Israel, and David slew the Syrians, 7,000 men that fought in chariots, 40,000 footmen, and killed Shophach and the captain of the host. He beat the crap out of the Arameans. 7,000 charioteers he kills. 7,000 chariots is a lot. Those are tanks back in that day, okay? 40,000 footmen, and he kills the captain of the host. So think how utterly he would have had to have smashed this army to get their captain and all these chariots, because he would have been trying to get away on a chariot. They were like, nope, they got these fools surrounded. That was dumb. It was a dumb move. And when the servants of Hadarezer saw that they were put to worse before Israel, they made peace with David and became Assyrians. Neither would the Syrians help the children of Ammon anymore. We ain't trying to get involved in your business. We got our own problems. And it came to pass that after the years was expired, at the time the kings were to go out in battle, Joab led forth the power of the army and wasted the country of the children of Ammon and came and besieged Rabbah. That's their capital. But David tarried at Jerusalem, and Joab smote Rabbah and destroyed it. So if you read the whole story, he's going to be like, David, you better come here before I take this city and name it after myself. Joab is always punking David. Joab is his sister. Remember, David is the youngest, so Joab could potentially be his own age. But he's like his sister's son. So he's his nephew. But he could be an older nephew, because David is young. And he's always talking crap to David. He's never really treating David with the honor that he deserves. And then David took the crown from their head and found it to be a weight of a talent of gold, and there were precious stones in it, and he set it upon David's head, and he also brought exceeding much spoil out of the city. And he brought out the people that were in it and cut them with saws and harrows of iron and with axes. So I don't think this is accurate. He brought out the people that were in it and cut them with saws and harrows of iron and axes. Other translations are going to say he put them to saws and harrows of iron and axes. Okay, well, what does that mean? It means that they were put to work cutting timber and stone for them. In other words, they put them to force tribute in that way. This is what they were doing. So saws and timber, they were actually cutting trees and hewing timber for him, and then stone quarrying. That's what they... Why are you going to put them to death with saws and iron and axes? Why not swords and spears? This is stupid. This is an army already with swords. Go get the saws and axes so that we can cut them in two with the saws. No. That's just a bad interpretation, I think. Even so, David dealt with all the cities of the children of Ammon, and David. So he definitely didn't go kill all the people with saws and axes in all the cities. What does he do? He puts them to tribute. They are hewers of wood and drawers of water. So some people might be putting, depending on where you live. What do you got there? Okay, well, you have to get me this much stone. You have mountains near you, so get me this much stone. Jerusalem stone is a pretty standard stone. I want you a stone this size, boom, boom, boom. And just like they had to make bricks for the Egyptians out of clay and straw, because that was what was available, these guys had to cut trees and hew stone for David's building projects. That would be a common form of tribute. Sometimes tribute is going to be money. Sometimes tribute is going to be materials that are going to be used on public works. And that's how you build up your kingdom and your glory and more cities and stuff like that. And There was a war again with the Philistines, and Elhanan, the son of Jair, slew Elami, the brother. So Elhanan, the son of Jair, slew Lami, the brother of Goliath the Gittite. Okay? Now there is another one that says slew the brother of Goliath the Gittite. That says Goliath. Okay? When you see two references and one doesn't make sense, you just want to understand this is probably his brother, whose spear staff was like a weaver's beam. If you see, let's see, the Ak, a brother, could be kindred of Goliath. It could be his son who inherited his spear, because David gets his sword, but not necessarily a spear. I don't know. He says, the brother of Goliath, whose spear staff was like a weaver's beam, and yet there was a war at Gath. So I thought Gath was incorporated into his kingdom, unless this is talking about a rebellion at Gath, or this is just retroactively talking about how he got Gath. There was a man of great stature whose fingers and toes were 4 and 20, so 24, 6 on each hand, 6 on each foot. He was also the son of the giant, so he could have been a son of Goliath. But when he defied Israel, Jonathan, the son of Shimei, David's brother, slew him. These were born unto the giants unto the giant in Gath. So I would assume the giant in Gath is Goliath. These are probably sons of Goliath. And this brother of Goliath could be a brother or it could be a kindred of Goliath, but I would assume they're sons. Because it says these were born unto the Goliath in Gath, and they fell by the hand of David and by the hand of his servant. So I would assume that these are sons of Goliath. So these are probably the last of the Nephilim. And Satan stood up against Israel and provoked David to number Israel. And David said to Joab and the rulers of Israel, go number Israel from Beersheba to Dan and bring the number of them to me that I may know it. And Joab answered, the Lord make his people 100 times so many more as they, but my lord the king, they are not all my lord's servants. And then does the Lord require a thing? Why will he cause the trespass of Israel? So it's interesting. In this version of Israel's history, remember this is probably composed by Ezra, they're omitting David's screw up with Bathsheba. I believe they're also omitting his war with Absalom. They are. So they omit David's sin with Bathsheba. They omit the war with Absalom, which is over the murder of daughters, and this is all the recompense for Bathsheba. And they basically, the reason they get this one screw up he has here with the son, with Satan numbering him to, or numbering the people, is because this is where the temple site is established. So remember, they're rebuilding the temple, and this is very important to the records. But they're omitting most of the stuff, most of David's mistakes is what seems to happen. Why? Because this is about the glory of David's kingdom. So, David said, Joab and the rulers of the people, go number Israel from Beersheba even to Dan, and bring the number of them to me, that I may know it. And Joab answered, the Lord make his people 100 times more as they be, but my lord the king, are they not all my lord's servants? Why then does the Lord require this thing? And why will he be a cause of trespass in Israel? So what I suspect is that in the numbering, it's understood that he is, maybe he's preparing to take a taxation of everybody. This is what you would do when you number everybody. Or maybe he is counting the people to see if he could take him in a civil war with just his Judite tribes. That seems to be based on how the numbering comes back. But Job seems to know this is wrong right off the bat. Nevertheless, the king's word prevailed against Job, wherefore Job departed and went through all Israel and came to Jerusalem. And Job gave the sum of the number of the people unto David, and they of Israel were 1,000, 100,000 men. So 1,000, a million, 100,000, 1.1 million that drew the sword, and Judah was 400, 10,000 men that drew the sword. So they got about 1.5 million in the armies. But there's twice as many as Israel as in Judah. But Levi and Benjamin counted he not among them, for the king's word was abominable to Job. So Job is sometimes right and sometimes wrong, but the point is he is not very submitted to David. And God was displeased with the thing, therefore he smote Israel. And David said unto God, I have sinned greatly because I have done this thing, and now I beseech thee, take away the iniquity of thy servant, for I have done foolishly. And the Lord spake to Gad, David's seer. So Nathan is the one who's around with the Bathsheba stuff. He's not mentioned at all. Oh, no, I'm sorry. He is mentioned because he's there when he talks about building the temple. Gad, but all the Bathsheba stuff is just overwritten. Go and tell David, saying, Thus saith the Lord, I offer these things, choose thee one of them, that I may do it unto thee. So Gad came to David and said to him, Thus saith the Lord, choose thee either 3 years famine, 3 months to be destroyed by the foes, while that the sword of thy enemies overtakes thee, or else 3 days of the sword of the Lord, even the pestilence in the land, and the angel of the Lord destroying throughout the coast of Israel. Now therefore advise thyself what word I shall bring again to him that sent me. And David said unto Gad, I am in great strait, let me fall now in the hands of the Lord. For very great are his mercies, but let me not fall in the hand of man. So the Lord sent pestilence upon Israel, and there fell 70,000 men. 70,000 men died because David numbered them. How do you like me now? And David sent an angel to Jerusalem to destroy it, and as he was destroying, the Lord beheld and repented him of the evil, and said to the angel that destroyed it, It is enough, stay now thy hand. And the angel of the Lord stood by the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite. So remember, the city used to be a Jebusite city. There's still Jebusites in it. And David lifted up his eyes and saw the angel of the Lord stand between the earth and heaven, having a drawn sword in his hand, stretched over the Jerusalem. Then David and the elders of Israel, who were clothed in sackcloth, fell upon their faces. And David said unto God, It is not I that commanded the people to be numbered, even as I who sinned and done evil. But as for these sheep, what have they done? Let thine hand, I pray thee, O Lord my God, be on me and on my father's house, but not on thy people, that they should be plagued. Oh, you want to stand and intercede for your people for good and not for evil? Because you are their federal head. Do you know what it's like to be the king? The Lord was king, and you're now king in his place. Then the angel of the Lord commanded Gad to say to David, and David should go up and set up on an altar to the Lord in the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite. And David went up to the saying of Gad, which he spoke in the name of the Lord. Ornan turned back and saw the angel, and the 4 sons with him hid themselves. Now Ornan was threshing wheat. And as David came to Ornan, Ornan looked and saw David, and went out to the threshing floor and bowed himself to David with his face to the ground. Then David said to Ornan, Grant me this place on the threshing floor, that I may build an altar therein to the Lord. Thou shalt grant it to me for the full price, that the plague may be stayed from the people. And Ornan said to David, Take it to thee, and let my lord the king do what is right, good in his eyes. I will give the oxen for the burnt offering, and the threshing instruments for the wood, and the wheat, and the meat offering, I give it all. And the king David said to Ornan, Nay, but I will verily buy it for the full price, nor will I take that which is thine for the Lord, nor offer burnt offerings without cost. So David gave to Ornan for the place of 600 shekels of gold by weight, and David built an altar there unto the Lord, and offered burnt offerings and peace offerings, and called him on the Lord. And he answered him from heaven by fire upon the burnt offering, and the Lord commanded the angel, and he put up his sword again in the sheath thereof. At that time David saw the Lord, and he answered him in the threshing floor of Ornan the Jebusite. For the tabernacle of the Lord which Moses made in the wilderness and the burnt offering were at that season the high place at Gibeon. So he's now going to move the tabernacle to where the temple is going to be. But David could not go before it to inquire of God, for he was afraid because of the sword of the angel of the Lord. Then David said, This is the house of the Lord God, and this is the altar of the burnt offering of Israel. And David commanded to gather together the strangers that were in the hand of Israel, and he set masons to hew wrought stones to build the house of God. So he's fully preparing to build the house of God, even though God's told him not to build it. But now the angel of the Lord tells him to build an altar there, so therefore he's going to build the temple there. And David prepared iron in abundance for the nails of the doors of the gates and the joinings, and the brass in abundance for the weight, and also cedar trees in abundance for the Zidonians. And they of Tyre brought much cedar wood to David. And David said, Solomon, my son, is young and tender, and the house that is to be built for the Lord must be exceeding magnificent, of fame and glory throughout all the countries. I will therefore now make preparation for it. So David prepared abundantly before his death. Then he called Solomon his son and charged him to build a house for the God of Israel. And David said to Solomon, My son, as for me, it is in my mind to build a house of the Lord, for the name of the Lord my God. And the word of the Lord came to me and said, Thou hast shed blood abundantly, hast made great wars. Thou shalt not build a house unto my name, because thou hast shed much blood on the earth in my sight. He didn't want his house built by a man represented as a bloody warlord. Even though it was necessarily for David to be a bloody warlord, he didn't want his house built by a bloody warlord. Remember, Jerusalem means, I believe it's the Lord is peace. Yah, I believe it means the Lord is peace. So it'd be bad for a bloody man to do it. Melchizedek was king of righteousness, and Salem was called the city of peace. Okay? So a man of war can't build the temple in the city of peace. It's be hypocritical. Be bad for marketing. He shall build a house for my name, and he shall be my son, and I will build his father. Now listen to this. Behold, a son shall be born unto thee. Now listen to this. Who shall be a man of rest of Noah, and I will give him rest from his enemies round about, for his name shall be Solomon, man of peace, and I will give peace and quietness to Israel in his days. He shall build a house for my name, and he shall be my son, and I will be his father, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever and ever. So what is this? The word of the Lord came to him. Well, he probably named Solomon after this prophecy. Man of peace. That's what Solomon means. Solomon, or man, is man of peace. That's why my name, Fochman, actually means fighting man. So if you guys are like, Aaron, why are you contentious and always looking for something wrong with everything? Because my name is Fochman, okay? So just leave me alone. It's also Aaron Matthew, which means enlightened gift of God, fighting man. So I apparently am enlightened, but I like to pick fights. But he says, a son will be born unto thee, a man of rest. Now remember, he's not citing the Lord accurately, because the Lord says after he dies, he'll raise up a seed to him. But this is David summarizing what the Lord says, and he names his son Solomon, man of peace, and I will give peace and quietness in Israel. Okay? For his name shall be Shalomo. Shalom is peace. Shalomo, the peaceful one. Okay? So this was probably given to him originally as a prophecy about Christ. Christ is our peace. Okay? But he names his son Solomon and thinks it's all going to be fulfilled in him. And the Jews think that too. He said, he shall build a house for my name, and he shall be my son, and I will be his father, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever over Israel forever and ever. Is that true? Does God establish Solomon's kingdom forever and ever? No, he does not. Now, my son, the Lord be with thee, and prosper thou, and build the house for the Lord thy God, for he has said of thee, only the Lord give thee wisdom and understanding. So I want you to see this. Notice he's citing 2 Samuel 7. This is clearly David paraphrasing what it was said to him by Nathan the prophet, okay? I will be my father, and he will be my son. If he commit iniquity, I will chase him with the rod of man, and the stripes of the children of men, which happened to Jesus. He shall build a house for my name, and I establish the throne of his kingdom forever. Okay, now, where does he say, you've been a man of blood, therefore, blah, blah, blah. We know Solomon is his youngest son, which means Solomon's probably not born yet. Because 2 Samuel 7, he says that to him, and it's after this, wait for it, it's after this that he goes into Uriah the Hittite. And then Solomon is the fourth son of Bathsheba. So David seems to name Solomon after him, after this promise. God does not seem to be pointing to Solomon. David seems to name Solomon after this promise. Now, God's going to allow some stuff, but that doesn't mean that's what God meant when he said what he said. So, he says, now my son, the Lord be with thee, and prosper thou, and build the house of the Lord thy God, as he has said of thee. Only the Lord give thee wisdom and understanding, and give thee charge concerning Israel, that thou mayest keep the law of the Lord thy God. Then thou shalt prosper if thou takest heed to fulfill the statutes and judgments which the Lord charged Moses with concerning Israel. Be strong and of good courage, and dread not, or be dismayed. Now behold, in my trouble I prepared for the house of the Lord 100,000 talents of gold, 1,000,000 talents of silver, and brass and iron without weight, for it is abundance. Timber also and stone I have prepared, and that thou may add thereto. So a talent is like 50 pounds. So 50 million... This can't be right. 50 million talents of silver? 50 million pounds of silver? And 5 million pounds of gold. 5 million. $167 billion worth of gold. $167 billion. Now Solomon made 666 talents of gold in a year. But where does he have 105 million talents of silver? Is that accurate? That's a lot of gold. The whole thing is overlaid with gold, but that is a lot of gold. $167 billion worth of gold. Could he have done it? Well, he is pillaging all around the Ammonites, the Edomites, the Canaanites, the Philistines, all these people. And these people have trade with the surrounding region. They're able to go hire 40,000 soldiers to do their bidding. So they've got lots of monteys. And those soldiers are only going to do it if the money is good and there's plunder on top of that. So could David have had that much money? It's looking like, yeah. It's looking like he piled up the monteys for Solomon's temple. Now, that's a lot of gold. Gold is heavy, but that is a lot of geometric quantity of gold. In brass and iron without weight, in other words, too much to count. For it is in abundance, timber also in stone I have prepared that thou mayest add thereto. Well, it seems like, because the timber and iron and all this other stuff, these guys are sending on the regs. Okay? He's been piling it up for years. He's been raiding and pillaging. He's got his guys cycling through for years, and I'm sure he's taken a cut of that pillage year after year after year. Moreover, there are workmen with thee in abundance, hewers and workers of stone and timber, and all manner of cunning, men for every manner of work, of the gold, the silver, the brass, the iron, there is no number. Arise, therefore, and be doing, and the Lord be with thee. David also commanded the prince of Israel to help Solomon his son, saying, Is not the Lord your God with you? And has he not given you rest on every side? For he has given the inhabitants of the land unto mine hand, and the land is subdued before the Lord and before his people. Now set your heart and your soul to seek the Lord your God. Arise, therefore, and build ye the sanctuary of the Lord, and bring the ark of the covenant of the Lord, and the holy vessel of the Lord, and the house that is to be built, and name the Lord. So when David was old and full of days, he made Solomon his son king over Israel, and he gathered together the prince of Israel, and the priests and the Levites. Now the Levites were numbered from age 30 years and upwards, and numbered by their poll, man by man, was 38,000. They couldn't serve as a priest until they were 30. That's why. There's 38,000 of them. Of which 24,000 were set forward in the work of the house of the Lord, and 6,000 were officers and judges. So notice, I talked to Mormons, and Mormons believe that they know they're coming from the Freemasons, and they believe that the Freemasons are a Danite sect that observed in the building of the temple the Levitical protocols, and they wrote them down, and they kept them and preserved them and restored them in the days of Joseph Smith and the Melchizedek priesthood. It's a cult. They're liars. They're Freemasons. The Freemasons are full of liars, but that's what they believe. Now notice who he's saying are doing the building. Does he say Danites are doing the building? No, he said 24,000 Levites are doing the building. Levites are doing the building, the work of the house of the Lord. Okay? Moreover, 4,000 were porters, and 4,000 praise the Lord with the instruments which I made. So these were doing all the sacrifices and stuff. Moreover, let's see, and David divided them in course of the sons of Levi, Gershom, Kohath, and Merari. They are going to have people that none of the actual building takes place near the temple. So the idea that these Danites knew all the stuff that these guys were doing, it's not true. Because David establishes what the temple is supposed to look like. They don't need to study the tabernacle or the Levites to figure out what the temple is supposed to be like. The only guy, this is Hiram Abiff, he's not the foreman for the temple. He's in charge of the bronze work. He is a son of a Danite and a Naphthalite who is going to then marry into Tyre, or it's a Naphthalite widow. So he's actually part Danite, part Naphthalite, but now she's married to a man of Tyre, and he gets trained up by that man in metalworking, and he's going to come and he's going to do the bronze working for the temple. Okay, that's it. He's not the foreman of the thing. He's not a secret guy who's a cult who died and was murdered and rose again. This is all just Freemason Gnostic mythology, okay? Don't listen to anything from the Freemasons. David divided them in courses among the sons of Levi, naming Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. The Gershonites were Ladan and Shimei. The sons of Ladan were Jehiel, Jethem, Joel, 3. The sons of Shimmer, Shelomoth, Haziel, and Haran, 3. These were the chiefs of the sons of Ladan. The sons of Shimei were Jahath, Zena, and Jeush, and Beriah. These were the sons of Shimei. Jahath was the chief, and Ziza the second, and Jeush and Beriah had not many sons. Therefore they were in one reckoning according to their father's house. The sons of Kohath, Amram, Izhar, Hebron, and Uziel, 4. The sons of Amram, Aaron and Moses. And Aaron was separated that he should sanctify the holy things of the sons forever, burn incense before the Lord, minister to him, and bless his name forever. Now concerning Moses, the man of God, were the sons of the name of the tribe of Levi. The sons of Moses were Gershom and Eleazar. The sons of Gershon, Shebuel the chief. The sons of Eliah were Rebai the chief, and Eleazar had no other sons. But the sons of Rebai were very many. The sons of Izhar, Shelomoth the chief. The sons of Hebron, Jeriah the first, Amram the second, Jaziel the third, and Jechamim the fourth. The sons of Uziel, Mecca the first, and Josiah the second. The sons of Merari, Mali, and Mushi. The sons of Mali, Elzar, and Kish. And Eleazar died and had no sons but daughters, but the brethren, the sons of Kish, took them. The sons of Mushi, Mali, and Eder, the Jeremoth 3. These were the sons of Levi after the house of their fathers, and the chiefs of their fathers, as they were counted by numbers by their names and their polls. And they did the work of the service of the house of the Lord from the age of 20 years upwards. So remember, without the book of Chronicles, we would not have the lineage of the priests. And this is very important stuff for the continuation of the priesthood after the Jerusalem temple is rebuilt. For David said, the house of the Lord of Israel has given rest to his people, that they may dwell in Jerusalem forever, and also unto the Levites. Now, forever is more of a figure of speech than an actual, like, rock hard thing, because they get kicked out a couple of times. And also unto the Levites, that they should no more carry the tabernacle, nor any vessels of it for the service thereof. For by the last words of David, the Levites were numbered from 20 years old and above. So David sets up the course of the priests, and all the stuff changes for the temple. David does this. Does he do this by the Lord prophetically? Maybe, or maybe he just does it. The Lord definitely allows the temple to be rebuilt, but it's not his original idea. His original response to David wanted to build a temple is a rebuke, saying, I will build you a temple. So why does David charge his son to build a temple? I don't know. It seems like David is misunderstanding the Lord. And the prophets knew in part. You got to remember, the prophets now know in part, okay? But he says, because their office was to wait for the sons of Eris in the service of the house of the Lord, in the courts and the chambers, and the purifying of the holy things, and the work of the service of the house of God, both for the showbread and the fine flour and the meat offering, and the unleavened cakes, and for that which was baked in the pan, and for that which was fried, for all manner of measure of size, and to stand every morning and thank the Lord, and eat, and likewise at evening, and to offer the burnt offering, the sacrifices of the Lord, and the Sabbaths and new moons, and the set by the feast, and by number according to the commanded them, continually before the Lord. And they that should keep charge of the tabernacle and the congregation, the holy place, the charge of the place, and the charge of the sons of Aaron and their brethren, and the service of the house of the Lord. Now this is important. What they need to keep track of who's the priest and how they do things comes from the book of Leviticus and Chronicles. Who does it, when they do it, how they do it, okay? They don't need the Talmud or the Mishnah to tell them how to do it. They don't need some special oral tradition that was passed down from Moses on today that nobody can validate and prove that was true to know how to do this stuff. The arguments that the Pharisees and Sadducees of the Sanhedrin used to justify the Talmud and the Mishnah are the exact same arguments, the exact same, 100% the same as the ones that the Catholics and the Orthodox use to justify their scripture plus tradition. The exact same BS. I mean, they're identical. It's like you could just replace the Pharisees and the Sadducees with the Catholics and the Orthodox, and you could replace the Reformed with the Essenes, because the Reformed are fatalists just like the Essenes were, and they're all about their Pythagorean and Platonic philosophy just like Luther and Calvin were. And they claim to be the true priesthood, even though they don't take part in the worship or whatever. So you literally have like the Pharisees, Sadducees, and Herodians or Essenes replicated in the Catholics or Orthodox and the Protestants, the three branches of Christendom. We have what we need in Leviticus. We have what we need here. If there's some variation on how you could potentially do something that's not written here, well, we can allow some variation if you're a Jew, okay? Same thing with the church. If there's some variation on how you conduct your worship service, it's not meant to be a liturgical service carried out by a priest. It's meant to be a fellowship gathering of a family, worshiping Christ, giving glory to his name, studying the scriptures, eating and breaking bread together in fellowship, and doing the communion, or the Eucharist, which is representative of the body of Christ distributed to all of us, and all of us becoming one in Christ. Okay? However you do that, as long as you're not doing it irreverently and boxing some people out like they're doing in Corinthians, that's fine. If there was more that needed to be done, it could be said. But they will capitalize on verses where Paul will say, and the rest I will put in order when I come to you. Okay? Well, where did the Corinthians write down the other stuff that Paul said? The answer is they didn't. These other traditions were all distinct. They're all different all over the church, and they eventually fought and argued over them and got them to do them one way, and then they said, oh, it's always been this way. I could just stack up documents from the early church where they said, oh, the apostles said this, and it's bullcrap. We know this was written by Hippolytus of Rome here, and this was written by these other guys in the Didache over here, and this was written by Barnabas over here, and then you guys write a document 100 years later that said this was all decided at the Council of Jerusalem, and Peter said this, and James said this, and it's an absolute fabrication. Catholic and Orthodox Church are loaded with this crap, okay? Well, the Jews were loaded with this crap too. You had people basically claiming, oh, the scriptures are inadequate. You need our special extra biblical knowledge, which is full of crap, to let our mystic cult rule over everything. Okay. Now these are the divisions of the sons of Aaron. The sons of Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. And Nadab and Abihu died before their father and had no children. Therefore Eleazar and Ithamar executed the priest's office. David distributed them, both Zadok, the sons of Eleazar, and Ahimelech, the son of Ithamar, according to their offices and their service. And there were more chief men found of the priests of Eleazar and the sons of Ithamar, and thus they were divided among the sons of Eleazar, were the 16 chief men of the house of their fathers. And the 8 among the sons of Ithamar, according to the house of their fathers, thus they were divided by lot, one sort with another, and the governors for the sanctuary, and the governors for the house of God, and the sons of Eleazar, and the sons of Ithamar. And Shemaiah, the son of Nethaniel the scribe, one of the Levites, wrote them before the kings of the priests, and Zadok, the priest, and Ahimelech, the son of Abiathar, and before the chief of the fathers of the priests of the Levites, the principal household, being taken for Eleazar, one taken for Ithamar. Now the first lot came to Jerobeam, the second to Jediah, and the third Harim, the fourth Sorim, and the fifth Malchijah, the fifth Mijamin, the seventh Hazok, the eighth Abijah. Abijah is going to be the house that, in the course of Abijah, is going to be the house that John the Baptist's dad is going to be part of. He's in the course of Abijah. So they know when these courses are. They know when these courses begin and end because they have a calendar new year, and that's all established in Leviticus. And they know. So for those of you who think, man, Leviticus is so boring and Chronicles is so boring, you need to understand, if you're a Second Temple Jew, how do you know how to do anything when you're coming back from captivity? And the answer is you don't unless you have these books. I realize this is boring for you to read because we don't have to do this stuff anymore. But for them, this was essential. This was telling you who's the nobility. This is telling you who's the priesthood. This is telling you whose job it is to do what, when, and how, and where. This is important. Where you're going to live, what property you inherited. It's all in their Bible. Okay, so when we get to the time of Christ and we see them doing all these things in particular ways, we need to understand that some of those things are corrupted by the Pharisees, Sadducees, and Herod, the Essenes and Herod. Okay, however, the right way to do those things was established. They have it in writing. This is why Jesus is rebuking them according to the scriptures. They're listening to other voices. That's why they're doing stuff wrong. And that's why they don't know he's here. The 9th, Jeshua. The 10th, Shechaniah. The 11th, Elisiah. The 12th, Jakim. The 13th, Huppah. The 14th, Jeshabib. The 15th, Bilgah. The 16th, Immer. The 17th, Hezer. The 18th, Aphes. The 19th, Pethathiah. The 20th, Jezakiel. And 1 and 20th of Jakin. The 2 and 20th of Gamil. And the 3 and 20th to Deliah. And the 4 and 20th to Messiah. So these guys all knew which one of these guys were descended from, and who was the firstborn, and who should be serving that priest's office. They all knew. It's this guy. He is so who is serving as the priest? There's a high priest who's above all of them, who's kind of in the office of Aaron, but the priests serving in their courses for 2 weeks at a time, doing their incense and all their stuff. They knew. Who are you descended from? Here. We have our family records. We match these to the temple records. These temple records were saved before the temple was destroyed. We know Ezra developed this, and everybody could go right to the Bible and go, here's who I'm descended from. It's my turn. Well, what am I supposed to do? Well, it's in Leviticus. And your father would have taught you this. You don't need a special Talmud or anything else because your father would have taught you. There's your oral tradition. And you also have the Bible backing up what he's saying. See, there's 2 witnesses of the same thing. And the rest of the sons of Levi were these, the sons of Amram, Shubael, and the sons of Shubael, Jediah. Concerning Rebai, the sons of Rebai, the first was Azariah of the Israelites, Shelomoth, the sons of Shelomoth, Jahath, the sons of Hemron, Jeriah the first, Amariah the second, Jatiel the third, Jechamim the fourth, the sons of Uziel, Micaiah, the sons of Micaiah, Shemir, the brother of Micaiah was Isaiah, the sons of Isaiah, Zechariah, the sons of Merari, Ramali, and Mushi, the sons of Jaziah, Beno, The sons of Merari by Josiah, Beno, Shobam, Shakur, and Ibri. And Mali came Eleazar, who had no sons, concerning Kish. The son of Kish was Jeremiel. The sons of Mushi and Mali and Eber and Jeremoth, these were the sons of Levites after their father's houses. These likewise cast lots over and against the brethren of the sons of Aaron in the presence of David their king, and Zadok and Ahimelech and the chief of the fathers of the priests, even the principal fathers, over against their younger brethren. What does that mean? They cast lots over against their brethren, the sons of Aaron. I don't know what that means. In the presence of David the king and Zadok and Ahimelech. Maybe it means they're doing the Urim and Thummim stuff. They cast lots over against their brethren, or these were the orderings of them in the service to come into the house of the Lord, and the rest of the sons of Levi were. I don't know what that means, that they cast lots. Somebody is welcome to be smarter than me and read some commentary and figure out that. But I don't know what that means. Probably they took turns doing stuff. They cast lots for doing certain services. But I don't know what that means. David and the officials of the army also set apart the service of the sons of Asaph and Heman and Jeduthun, who should prophesy with lyres and harps and cymbals. So notice they're prophets with lyres and harps and cymbals. So for people who will say, like Chris White, I like Chris White in a lot of things, but he says that Asaph, Psalm 83, is not a prophecy. It's actually just a song that's happening in David's day, and that is not true. Psalm 83 is a prophecy about what's happening with the Muslim Brotherhood and all the terrorist organizations against Israel today. Okay? Notice they prophesy with lyres and harps and cymbals, and there's Asaph right there with them. His scriptures, he's known as Asaph the seer, and his psalms are prophecies. The list of those who did the work of their duties was the sons of Asaph, Zachar, Joseph, Nethaniah, Azariah, the sons of Asaph under the direction of Asaph, who prophesied under the direction of the king. He prophesied. Of Jeduthun, the sons of Jeduthun, Gedaliah, Zeri, Jeshiah, Shemaiah, Hashabiah, Matthias, 6 under the direction of their father, Jeduthun, who prophesied with a lyre and thanksgiving the praise of the Lord. Of Heman, the sons of Heman, Bukiah, Matthiah, Uziel, Shebuel, and Jeremoth, Hananiah, Alethiah, Gidalti, and Romamtiezer. Joksheba and Melathai and Hothar and Mezaioth. All these were the sons of Heman, the king's seer, according to the promise of God to exalt him, for God had given Heman 14 sons and 3 daughters. They were all under the direction of their father, with the music of the house of the Lord, with cymbals and harps and lyres for the service of the house of God. Asaph, Jeduthun, and Heman were all under the order of the king. So we're going to talk about how Ethan and Heman and these guys, Solomon was even wiser than them. So these were wise men, prophets, priests, and psalmists. They and their kindred who were trained in the singing of the Lord, all of whom were skillful, numbered 288. And they cast lots for their duties, small and great, teacher and pupil alike. The first lots fell for Asaph to Joseph, the second to Gedaliah, to him, to his brothers, to his sons 12, the third to Zakur, sons and his brothers 12, the fourth Israel, sons and his brothers 12, the fifth to Nethaniah, the sons and his brothers 12, the sixth to Bukiah, the sons of his brothers 12. What are these? These are worship teams. Whose turn is it to play worship this week? They're casting lots for whose turn is it to play worship this week. Okay? So notice you've got 24, just like you've got 24 priests. So they have descendants, and their descendants could have been doing the song and jams thing, okay? I'm not going to read all these names because my tongue is getting twisted. But you've got 24 courses of singers. And notice it's Nethaniah and his sons and his brothers 12. So they're bands of 12 people playing in courses. It's your 2 weeks of playing praise and worship. So it's not like you just wearing yourself out playing praise and worship. You've got 2 weeks on for the year where you're doing praise and worship for 24/7 IHOP prayer. Okay? And 24/7 you're doing that, but there's 12 of you doing that. So it's 12 of you. You can be like, okay, we're going to break up in groups of 6, and we're each going to do 8-hour shifts of playing worship. 2 weeks on, and the rest of the year we're on vacation. What do they do in their spare time? Basic gardening and shopping and trading and stuff. Getting their welfare. As for the divisions of the gatekeepers, the Korites, Meshmelech, son of Kor, the sons of Asaph, Meshmelech had sons, Zechariah the firstborn, Jediel the second, Zebediah the third, Jediel the fourth, Elam the fifth, Jehonan the sixth, Aziel the seventh, Obed-Edom had sons, Shemaiah the firstborn, Jehozabad the second, Joel the third, Sechar the fourth, Nathaniel the fifth, Amniel the sixth, Ezekiah the seventh, Pelothai the eighth, for God blessed him. Also to his son Shemaiah's sons were born, who exercised authority in their ancestral houses, for they were men of great ability. The sons of Shemaiah, Othni, Raphael, Obed, Elzabad, and the brothers were able men, Elihu and Semachiah. All these sons, Obed-Edom with their sons and daughters, were able men qualified for service, 62 of Obed-Edom. Meshlemiah had sons and daughters, able men 18. Hosah, the son of Merari, had sons, Shimri the chief. For though he was not the firstborn, his father made him chief. Hilkiah the second, Tebaliah the third, Zechariah the fourth, and the sons of the brothers in Hosah totaled 13. These divisions of the gatekeepers, corresponding to the leaders, their duties, and their kindred, did ministering in the house of the Lord, and they cast lots by their ancestral houses, small and great alike, for their gates. So these guys are going to serve as temple guards and stuff like that. The lot cast for the east fell to Shelemiah, and they cast lots for the son of Zechariah, prudent counselor, and his lot came for the north. Obed-Edom's came from the south, and his sons were allotted the storehouse. Shupim and Hosah came for the west, and the gates of the Sheleketh and the ascending road, guard corresponding to guard. On the east were the 6 Levites of each day, in the north 4 each day, in the south 4 each day, as well as 2 and 2 at the storehouse. And for the colonnade in the west, there were 4 on the road for the colonnade. So what are they doing? All these details. They're rebuilding the temple and the walls of Jerusalem. They're telling you this is how the kingdom must be organized. This is how David set it up. Okay? And so all the temple guards that come and arrest Jesus and stuff like that, who are they? They're the descendants of these guys. That was their job. These are the divisions of the gatekeepers among the Korahites and the sons of Merari. And it's interesting that Korah rebels against Moses, and the descendants of Korah arrest Jesus. Isn't that interesting? And the Levites and Ahijah had charge of the treasures of the house of God and the treasures of the dedicated gifts. We could probably even figure out which gate they're coming from, because he went out to the Garden of Gethsemane, which I believe is to the east. So it's the guys who are coming from the east, and that's these Levites, and they're the divisions of the gatekeepers. It's the Shupim and the Hosah in the west. And on the east, there were 6 Levites. Shelemiah, it's the descendants of Shelemiah who arrested Jesus. And the sons of Jeliai, Zetham and his brother Joel were in charge of the treasuries for the house of the Lord, of the Amramites, and the Israelites, and the Hebronites, and the Uzzielites, and Shebuel, the son of Gershom, the son of Moses. Shebuel, the son of Gershom, the son of Moses, was chief officer in charge of the treasuries. So obviously this is a descendant of the son of Gershom. If you remember, another grandson becomes the guy who's going to be the Danite priest. His brothers from Eleazar were his son Rabiah, his son Jeshiah, his son Joram, his son Zikri, and his son Shelomoth. This Shelomoth and his brothers were in charge of all the treasuries, the dedicated gifts of King David, and the heads of the families, and the officers of the thousands, the hundred commanders of the army had dedicated. From booty won in battles, they dedicated gifts for the maintenance of the house of the Lord. So, where did they get all that money for the temple? They dedicated booty won in battles for the maintenance of the house of the Lord. That's how he has such a big pile of gold to build the temple. Also, all that Samuel the seer and Saul son of Kish and Abner son of Ner and Joab the son of Zariah had dedicated, all dedicated gifts were in care of Shelomoth and his brothers. So it's not just them. Remember, Samuel is a judge for a while, so they have battles and plunder from those battles, and he's getting tribute from people, and then Saul's getting that, and then Abner's getting that, and then Joab is getting that. So whenever they go out and battle and plunder somewhere, a chunk of that goes to this, the dedicated gifts that were going to the king, and they ultimately understood they were for the care of the future temple of the Lord and the tabernacle and stuff. And the Israelites, Shania and his sons were appointed in the outside duties of Israel, and the officers and judges. Of the Hebronites, Hashabiah and his brothers, 1,700 men of ability, had the oversight of Israel west of the Jordan to all the work of the Lord and the service of the king. Of the Hebronites, Jeriah was the keeper of the Hebronites. In the 40th year of David's reign, search was made, and whatever genealogy or family or men of great ability among them were found at Jazer in Gilead. So at the end of David's reign, the 40th year, a search was made, and whatever genealogy or family of men of great ability among them was found in Jazer. Of them were found at Jazer in Gilead. So apparently, if I'm reading this right, their genealogies at the end of David's reign were kept at Gilead. And if you remember, the Gileadites were special allies to David when Absalom tried to overthrow him. That's where he went. King David appointed him and his brothers 2,700 men of ability, heads of families, to have oversight of the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of the Manassites, for everything pertaining to God and the affairs of the king. So in other words, they're governing those three tribes. This is the Hebronites, Jeriah. Okay? This is the list of all the people of Israel, the heads of the families, the commanders of the thousand and the hundred, and their officers who served the king in all matters concerning the divisions that came and went month after month throughout the year, in each division numbering 24,000. Jashobeam, the son of Zabdiel, was in charge of the first division of the month, and his division were 24,000. He was a descendant of Perez and was chief of the commanders of the army for the first month. So now he's got the armies of Israel. Who is in charge? Because they're doing regular raids and pillaging. Dodai, the Ahohite, was in charge of the division of the second month. Milcah, the chief officer of his division, his divisions were 24,000. So he had 24,000 divisions of men under him. The third commander for the third month was Benaiah, the son of the priest Jehoiada, as a chief. So Benaiah is the son of a priest as chief, and his division were 24,000. This is interesting because Levites weren't supposed to go to battle, and yet this guy is one of his top generals. This is Benaiah, who was a mighty man of the 30 and the commander of the 30. His son Ammizabad was in charge of the division. They weren't supposed to go into battle, but Saul killed the priest, and it was on. So apparently I had the pause button pushed while I read those last three chapters, and I am too tired of reading to read them again. I'll go over those next time in another video, and we'll get into Solomon's Temple, which is a lot, and so we'll do like 13 chapters of that and then try to finish up the rest in like 2 sections, and then we'll be on to Ezekiel and Daniel in about a month. So I hope you guys are blessed by this. Have a great rest of your day. Batman out. Peace.
Peace, I'm out. I'm Batman.